welcome to another phase, Madeleine.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm super excited, to be here.
How are you doing?
Good, all good.
Yeah. So for anybody, let's kind of like, we'll just warm up into this. Like for anybody that doesn't know you, I mean, like I'm often, any chance that I can, I'm like, oh, check out Madeleine's work. And like, if people have read Luna, then they will have like seen your name as like recommended astrologers to see, and like you're one of my teachers. Nice. But one of the main reasons why, like I kind of I did know I always say I've started asking you a question and then just started talking about something else. But anyway, basically the reason why I was really like wanted to talk to you is because you're one of my like astrology teachers, and you like I've been learning about like the moon for a long time and astrology, but when I did your moon workshop, I can't remember, it was like a few years ago now, and it just blew my mind. It was the first time that it really brought the moon to life in the way that it plays out in like our personalities and our needs. And like as soon as I left the workshop, I was like on my phone, like rang my boyfriend. I was like, what time are you born? Like, what time are you born? Because I need to know your moon sign. Can you ring your mum now? Because even during the workshop, I was like, it was like between, I think there was a couple, and I was like, it's one of two. Because of the way that you teach, it makes it so clear and you see it so vividly. And I was like, it's one of the two. And yeah, he was like, he's a Taurus.
He was one of them.
Yeah, and he's like Taurus Moon, and it just made so much sense to what we were going through at the time, and it really helped us kind of like reconnect, which was really powerful. So yeah, I can't wait to just kind of like dive into your perspective like on the moon and astrology, because I think if people have been listening to this podcast are like, they'll know that I've interviewed a few different astrologers, and what I love is that everybody has their own perspective on it.
Totally,
and it comes from such different places, and there is no right, and I think so many people are, oh, but is this right? And there's just so many different ways of coming at it. Everybody has their own, like I said, I mean, as humans we have our own perspectives anyway, we have our own experiences, but I think as well, like one of the things that I think is just like mega cool, like how you got into astrology and how that's such a big thing, like in Argentina, like where you're from.
Yeah, it's like going to see a therapist and like I'm going to see an astrologer is like super common. Imagine that I went to see an astrologer for the first time 20 years ago, and I was 17, and so my story is that so I started I mean, it's kind of like a funny one. Like I started acting when I was 16, and I studied in Argentina, and then I went to New York, and that's when I came back, and I had teacher, a theater teacher, who was this actor who was also an astrologer. And within the group from my kind of acting community, there was 2 other astrologers. So we had always, you know, imagine I was like 17 and I was like in these conversations with like people that we were talking about our charts. And that's when I met this astrologer and I had this reading, and it just blew my mind away. I couldn't believe how she, with just like, you know, the facts of my birthday, she was able to express so much about, you know, who I was, like my fears, my, you know, like my hopes, my dreams, you know, like things that I didn't even say to myself. Like she was just expressing them, and it just I remember I left her house and I just sat there like on the street, and I just like was crying because I knew about my moon in Capricorn, my ascendant in I could, like, you know, suddenly I felt seen. I felt that there was a space for me. There was a language that could explain everything that I was like internally feeling. So then what I did was, so my focus was my art practice. Like in my acting kind of classes, I did dance like loads. I did photography, I paint, you know, like I always been like very multidisciplinary in terms of my kind of artistic journey. And so what happened was that then I kind of got into cinema. So I studied film, and I at the same time studied astrology with one astrologer for 1 year, like kind of like a little thing. I was just like, and then another astrologer, I did 2 years with her, like weekly classes. And I felt that there was this language that I could understand, and it felt like a refuge. It felt a place where I could go and gain confidence and trust within myself, and understand my path, you know, like in a way. And then I did there's a career in Argentina, a 4-year career of astrology.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of my film studies, I got into this faculty, and yeah, so I studied then. And again, like, I never thought I was going to be an astrologer. Like,
even though you were doing all of that study.
It was never my intention, because I was really obsessed with my art practice. For me, it was all about like, what is my message, what I want to kind of share. I always had to study a lot, like, you know, like I have a moon and ascendant in Capricorn, so in a way I had, you know, I really worked hard and like put a lot of effort. And so then I studied, but then I didn't finish that faculty because I moved to London to do an MA in performance art. And that was like I arrived to London 10 years ago, 10 days before turning 28, so before my Saturn return, and it changed my life. It was a master that was like a before and after in my life in many levels. I mean, it was just really like it really transformed me. And then after, when I finished, I thought, okay, how I began studying here at the Faculty of Astrological Studies, and I started thinking, how can I integrate, you know, my art practice with astrology? How, for me as a creative person, astrology has been such, you know, like for me, I always say that film and astrology are my biggest sources of inspiration in life, in everything, you know, like, and it's really fascinating because, you know, like I was thinking, like, for me as an artist, it just gave me so much sense of direction and meaning as well. And as I said, like trust and confidence, but also I wanted to kind of put together these two concepts, you know, because astrology, you know, like when you are being creative, when you are, you know, doing something creative in your life, you're expressing your feelings, your emotions, your needs, your ideas, you know, you're expressing who you are. So it's the same as when you see someone's chart, you know, it's like, it's all of that is being shown and expressed. So I did my first astrology for artists workshop because I got a grant from the Arts Council to do for like at the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, and yeah, and that was my first astrology for artists workshop. This was like 7-8 years ago, and then I got invited to do it somewhere else, and then somewhere else, and that's how like suddenly, and then like at the beginning it was just for artists, and then suddenly like people that were more like in healing and spiritual kind of, you know, started joining, and then I opened it up. I mean, it was never closed actually, but like, you know, but then I came to realize that we are all artists, and life is our most important creative act, you know, like that the more we know ourselves, the more freedom we have to choose who we want to be. It's like, you know, like it's just so powerful, because when you look at someone's chart, it's like tapping into their potential, you know, you're tapping into their authenticity, and getting to know all of those, you know, all of the energies that, you know, you are not just, there's no one way of being that is essential to being. I always say that, you know, so there's not like I am like this and that's it. Astrology is not meant to pin you down. It's not meant to condition you. It's, on the contrary, it's meant to open up different ways of expressing and being.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was actually thinking of a few anecdotes about through this journey that made me also arrive to where I am today, which is that like, for example, when I had this reading, I think I did, I wrote a post about it. When I had this first reading when I was 17, the astrologer said like, oh, you're very good at writing and speaking and, you know, like communicating. And I was like, you know, I took when I was 10, I took the effort prize at school. You know, I got the effort prize. Then when I was doing my international baccalaureate, like I was told that I would like not pass or like just pass. And then I got the best mark because I work, you know, a lot.
Yeah, that Capricorn.
Yeah, totally. And then, and so when she said, you're really good at, I was looking, and I remember I looked at her and said like, I'm really sorry, but you know, that's not me. And she was like, well, you have Mercury, you know, like really nicely aspected in the 10th house. I mean, it is there, you know. And it really, I was like, oh wow, so she's telling me that I have this.
And what's the 10th house for anybody that's like, what?
It's a house of career. Yeah, it's a house of career, of work, of, you know, like of how, yeah, your choices of career as well, of like how you make yourself visible.
Yeah. So Mercury, which is all about communication,
yeah,
and sharing ideas. In the 10th
it's like
house.
The messenger, you know. So it's like it relates to your voice, your message, what is it that you have to say, your interest as well, you know. So that's why I might have changed interest or career throughout my life, you know, because Mercury is there. So it's like, you know, it's moving. So it was. So then when I got into film, I remember, because of course with my, you know, like that's the thing, it's like one side of me, I have ascendant and moon in Capricorn, and I'm Sun Saturn as well. So it's like a side of me is like very very strict, very kind of, you know, a lot of effort and rigor, and a feeling of like I'm not good enough, you know. There's a lot of that, but at the same time, and I went to a school that reinforced that, you know, a school that reinforced like learning by heart, let's say, where
there's so many schools are like that, aren't they?
Totally.
Yeah.
So when I got into film, I remember that I consciously thought, okay, I remember that I had to write the first essay, and I was, you know, where at school I used to ask for help to my mom, and here I was in my university, like, and I needed to write this essay, and I was like, okay, I'm supposed to be able to do this, you know, like I'm supposed to have this within me, and I went through a process. It took me like around 2 years to unlearn the way I learned and learn a new way, because. And that's the thing, it's like astrology gave me this, you know, like knowing my chart and knowing that you know, it gave me this thing of like, okay, I need to transcend, you know, my fear, my self-limiting beliefs, you know, what my past experience, to be able to embrace this Mercury and what this Mercury is kind of, you know, like within me, and like being able to communicate. So that was like one thing. Like now I'm thinking of another thing which was really mind-blowing, is that when I was I mean, I think that this anecdote can really give people an understanding of how you can,
even like what you were just saying about having to unlearn. It's just so, that will be like, I think that's just so relatable, because I know that even when I'd signed up to like a copywriting course for like just for my business, to learn how to, I was like, I need to learn how to communicate better for my business and for Instagram and the way that I talk. And like, I had to unprogram so much from school, because like at school, it's like, you've got to get it right first time. It's like pass or fail. You've got to get it right first time. And I remember like my copywriting teacher was like, it's a shitty first draft. Do not, that is all like, and it took me so long to just get over that kind of perfection that it's just so ingrained of like, you've got to know it's got to be perfect, or it's got to, you know, like first time round, you don't get a redo. It's not, there's no editing or anything like that. It's just do it and get it right the first time. So you just there's so much that I think we have to undo from
totally
school. Like, so much, like I mean, that's how another conversation, but anyway. But I think like you're saying, like the birth chart shows you your potential, like your innate things, before you have these experiences or these encounters that maybe squash those natural parts of you. But
also there's, you know, sometimes the first contact we have with that kind of quality, energetic quality, is not like in the highest place, you know. We need to grow, you know. We need to kind of like kind of evolve, you know, within our own chart. We are constantly evolving, and like for example, I have this other moment in my life when I was 10 until I was 13. I had loads of panic attacks. Like they started when I was 10. I remember perfectly, even like when it happened, like the moment and everything. And it was something that started it happened one day, and then it happened late again, and then and I was like I imagine like a super shy little girl that and I was feeling a lot, and I was having all of this imagination that got triggered. I had all of these visions, these ways of I was able to say to people things that they were feeling, like I started having worse and worse, to the point that my mom sent me to a like a therapist, and also like even a psychiatrist she sent me, because there was one day that I was at a friend's house. I was like 12 or so. I was at a friend's house, and my mom left me there, and then she left, and then 1 hour later I called her crying, saying, pick me up, please pick me up now. So she comes, she picks me up, and I'm like on the car with her, and my mom has moon in Gemini, so like she's always asking me questions, like, and wanted to kind of get things out of me. So she was like, so Madeleine, like, what happened? And I said, well, I'm with them, but they are not them. They are people dressed like them, like, so imagine like I was like having this kind of, it was like, at some point I couldn't go to my friend's house. I couldn't go to school, like it was really something. I was like quite open energetically. Like it was as if I was just too sensitive.
What do you think that triggered that? What do you think activated that? Was that a planetary thing?
No, I did therapy many years to have a look at that. But when I studied astrology and I saw, and I saw that I have Mars, Neptune, in the 12th house. So so the 12th house is a house of the collective unconsciousness. It's a house of Pisces, and whenever you have a planet there, it's as if like Mars, for example, I have Mars conjunct Neptune, and then the moon as well. So it makes me be like super ultra sensitive, like super kind of psychic in many ways, like, and also Mars that relates to action and assertion and being daring, it's in a sign that loses its strength, loses it's in a house, that kind of loses sense of direction, and next to Neptune means that, my imagination was super triggered. And it was interesting because I remember looking and going deeper into this aspect and understanding that that's what makes me be so sensitive and so porous. And that's what makes me be an astrologer, that makes me be an artist, so it has its talents. Yeah. But it also has its challenges, because you can get very easily into like being sad or depressed, or, it's like in some way I know that I have this in my chart, and that I need to constantly look after, constantly nurtured, constantly get to understand, constantly protect this side of myself in the sense of knowing that I need to channel this energy. Because when I'm not doing like astrology, when I'm not doing creative things, like my emotion starts like building up, and I lose myself, I get like, so, but when I am actually moving this energy in, Neptune is all about imagination and visuals, and next to Mars that is like super triggered in Sagittarius, in the 12th house of the collective unconsciousness, so it is, I don't know if it makes sense what I'm saying, but like what I mean is like you get to know, I have this challenging part, in my chart, and it's up to how I use it, what I do with it. If it's something that makes me happy, or there's something that makes me feel bad with myself, or lost, or confused. So it's interesting also in that respect, when you kind of, when you're like, okay, that's another thing that I was actually telling someone quite recently, like whatever you have in your chart is not an excuse. It shouldn't be an excuse or a justification.
I think a lot of people, especially when you see all the memes around and people are like, oh yeah, it's because I'm an Aries that I'm like this, or like, and I think that it's so, I mean, like that can be fun, but also it is also superficial, because it's discrediting the power of astrology, because when we have that self-awareness, we also have options to do things differently.
Yeah, and also it's like, it's kind of saying like, okay, so I have this, and it's challenging, but this is showing me my way. This is showing me my path. This is showing me the journey of my life. So if I negate it, if I ignore it, if I leave it aside, this will come up as destiny all the time, because it will stay in the, it's when things stay in the unconscious, then they come, in or dominates us in some way. So it's kind of saying like, okay, I have this. What can I do with this? I'm always thinking like, okay, what can I do with this? How can I use it? I experiment with it to find new ways of expressing it. So it's very interesting when it gave me clarity of like, oh, I'm not, because before when I was in my adolescent, and all of this stuff happening, I was thinking like, oh, I have some sort of problem. I mean, I have a problem. You know, we kind of get into these labels of like, you know, I'm not good enough. You know, like, I don't know what, you know, and I remember thinking, I don't have a problem. You know, I love that. You know, like I have this and I need to work this out myself. I need to learn how to use this because this is like, you know, an amazing talent and it's super dangerous. Yeah. You know, it's how you bring these energies to life. And that is only you know how to do it, because it's your creativity and it's the connection with all of the rest of your chart as well. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, there was one day, this was like 15 years ago or so, that I went to an art gallery and I met a man. This has really changed my vision of this. What I'm going to tell now is it really made me be who I am today in some way. Oh, because wow. It really impacted me. And then a lot of this type of experiences happened later. And so I met this man, he was around 60. In this art gallery was this opening, and he kind of, and we started speaking about astrology because it's like really, really common. And he kind of said,
so was this in Argentina?
Yeah, this is in Argentina 14 years ago. So, and he said, very proud. He was like, because my chart, I was told that I could have been very, very famous, you know, like a very important person, you know, and he said it with like some sense of pride. And I was like, and so he searched for his chart. He showed it to me, and, you know, and his chart was one of those charts that back then when I look at, you know, I remember I looked at it and I was like, wow, you know, because it was ascendant in Leo. Mm-hmm. And he had around 5 or 6 planets in the first house of Leo. So they were all in Leo in the first house. So just imagine like someone with ascendant in Leo, 6 or 5 planets in the first house, which is about, you know, the first house is the house of the ascendant, it's the house of I am, it's the house of how you show yourself out there, you know,
and also that Leo energy.
I mean, imagine the amount of like drama and like expression and creativity and, you know, and like romance and love and like, you know, there's just so much there that we could talk about. But then he had Saturn, you know, which is the planet of obstacles, of limitations, fears, you know, where we need to master, in the 4th house, which is the house of our past, our lineage, our, you know, like our home, you know, it's a house associated with Cancer. Right. And so he then told me that he went to a school, which is, there's 2 schools in the city of Buenos Aires that are very difficult to get in. They are funded by the government, and they are very analytical and logical and practical. And, you know, they value, those are 2 schools that they value a lot, like the intellect, you know, like rationalizing. And everything that was like creative or, you know, like kind of more vulnerable or more softer or, you know, wasn't kind of valued, you know. So he went to school, and also his family came from kind of a military background, you know. So that's Saturn in the 4th house, strong. Which is about duty and responsibility with the family, you know, and tradition. And, you know, there was this, so then all of his consciousness, and this is something that we can definitely do. We edit our chart, we forget about things, you know, and his consciousness was placed in this Saturn in the 4th house. Because then I realized that this man was the husband of the gallerist. So the gallerist was this woman who was a gallerist, you know, a curator, an artist, a writer. She's quite small, but has like heels, like wearing like this. She's like, she arrives and she's like a complete diva, like literally like glamorous. Someone that arrives like that and like, you know, like this and like, you know, and everything is like exuberant, and she just wants to be admired and venerated, and she's like creative. She's surrounded by all of these artists. She travels all around the world, and he stays at home taking care of the kids. And I was thinking, wow, this man met someone and projected all of his Leo planets to this woman. Because of course, as he wasn't able to hold all of this, most probably he he was able at some extent, but not all of it. And he projected into his wife, who she was this Leo diva, and I was like, wow, it just blew my mind how you can have in your chart, when I see someone's chart, it's like looking at a potential, what it shows me, the energies that are available to you. What are you doing with them is your choice. And we, of course, we are like little kids, and then we kind of grow and we say, oh, I like this about myself. I don't like that about myself. I project this. I negate, I ignore, I adore, I'm best friends, And that's the main thing, is how creative are you in combining your energies to fully express who you are. And the main thing is to awaken all of these energies, to bring consciousness and, and awareness to all of these different parts of who we are. We are not meant to be just one thing, we are vibrational, beings, that we are constantly changing. And I was thinking, this man stayed in one little bit of his chart, and the other just pushed it away to someone else. And I was like, wow, we can do that.
Yeah,
we can really put something in the unconscious and say, you stay here and I will not look at you throughout my life. Or you can like bring it to consciousness, of course it needs, astrology is there, but one needs to do the work, it's up to one, in the end, at the end of the day.
But even though he knew that in his chart, he still
because he felt very proud of his chart, he was like,
it's like the trophy, but
you can see there the Leo traits, but then it's just mind-blowing.
I've been reading The Artist's Way, and she talks about Julia Cameron talks about the shadow artist, and how suppressed creatives are drawn to creative people, so they end up in relationships with people, or they either have loads of money but they sponsor artists or buy loads of art, so it's interesting. Like, I've just been reading that, and you saying
it's when one can't, like, when there's still like a process to hold on to that energy. I mean, projections are like such a big thing.
Like in relationships, like totally.
And
even
actually,
as you're saying that, I'm like, oh my god, what am I projecting right now? my boyfriend.
I mean, we are constantly doing that. But like, also, like, I remember when I was studying here astrology, and like and we were seeing the chart of someone. I don't remember who it was, and I started crying in the class because we started seeing the life story of this person. And I remember, like, I got so emotional. I was like, this person did all of that with this chart, with this chart. Like, this person was able to, I was like, I was amazed. I was so inspired, and that's when I actually, throughout my process of studying astrology, it's like, I don't assume anything by looking at someone's chart. I don't take any, like, I learned that you can see a chart that looks fascinating from an astrological perspective, but then the person, wasn't able to embrace all of those talents, let's say. Or you can see a chart that looks very harmonious and simple, and you wouldn't, and then they are the things that they do, so it's really fascinating, because for me, that's why I like to kind of think about the chart as like, also like from a queer perspective, in the sense of allowing the chart to be revealed to me by the person as well. And because when you see someone's chart, it's like, you don't see if the person is alive or dead, if it's black or white, if it's a girl or a boy, you just don't know. So it's interesting. It's I don't know. I can like continue. It's and also it's like how, like, for example, I mean, concerning your ascendant, you have ascendant in Libra. I knew it. Like, I remember I was always thinking when you came to workshops and your chart had ascendant in Scorpio, I was like, I think it's more Libra than Yeah, it's I mean, you still have so many planets in Scorpio,
Yeah.
so you
I
most
think
probably you felt that, you know.
Yeah, I think that because I did that birth, I spoke to you, didn't I? Because like my mum, first of all, I thought I was Libra rising, and then my mum gave me a different birth time, and then I was like, then it made me Scorpio, so I was like, okay, well, I've always wanted to be Scorpio. Like, I love those Scorpio vibes, I'll take that. And then I think, but then I just don't know if that really resonates with me, you know, when the different things like in readings, I was like, oh, it feels a little bit off. And then like I think I spoke to you about it and ended up doing just a rectification, which is where you put your details.
Yeah,
like you can do it with an astrologer, but I just ended up doing it like a free one. But I'm sure it would have been a lot better if I'd have done it with an astrologer. But
yeah, you should definitely do it with an astrologer.
Because do you know someone that does it? I don't know if I think
I can search. I can search in the Faculty of Astrological Studies. Most probably there's someone. I don't do that, but yeah.
No, because that's, again, speaking of astrologers having different perspectives, like astrologers specialize in different things. You have like medical astrologers, you have like financial astrologers, you have like all of these different ones, and you probably have now like astrologers specializing in the 13th sign. Like there's all these different things going on, isn't there? But yeah, so now with the Libra, my boyfriend is actually Scorpio rising ascendant.
Oh, wow.
And like I'm like, oh my God, I see that in him.
Yeah.
And that's not in me.
No, it's
no, I am more kind of like that harmonious. And also I think just coming back to my being a hairdresser and like the aesthetic thing being such an important thing for me, and like
I mean your work, you know, like your Instagram is so aesthetic. I mean the aesthetic, the beauty, the harm. I mean you kind of express so much of your Libra, you know, of who you are. The thing is that the ascendant, the way that I look at it is that the ascendant is who you are, but also who you need to become. Right. You know, it's like when I teach, I always say that the sun is the captain of your boat. No, so it's the one that is in the timon and looking at the future, at what is coming. You know, it represents what you're conscious, your life purpose. You know, then you have the moon that is the co-pilot, like running to the kitchen, getting like food. You know, making sure that the sun is like fed and nurtured. And you know, and the moon takes care of it. And then you have Mercury chatting there, you have Venus painting the boat, you have Mars putting the sail up, you know, like we have like the whole team there, you know, and who is the leader is the sun. However, what is the ascendant? And the ascendant is the boat, you know, is what moves you forward, you know. It's like what you know, another way of that I love to kind of put it is that the sun is the hero. No, and the moon is the place that the home that you were born, you know, like the land, you know, the land, the home, the family, you know, that is the moon. And then you have the hero. But for the hero to become a hero has to go, you know, have to take a quest. Yeah. And that quest is the ascendant, you know, the quest that makes you become this hero, you know, that makes you become this sun is that quest, you know. So it's like, is what appears, what you appear is the ascendant, you know. It's like so again, it's who you are, but who you need to become. So even though we are expressing, and people like, let's say, you know, this is my boat and this is your boat. So
you're holding up a glass. Holding up a glass there, anyone's holding up a phone.
Yeah, that's true. God. So like if we look at each other, we are two boats, you know, and we are at the distance. If I look at your boat, I can't see your sun, your moon, and I see your boat. I see your ascendant. You know, so
I'm loving this description so much.
So it's like we see each other and we see the ascendant, you know, but then we are inside the boat. We can't come out and look at how our boat looks, you know. Yeah. So that's why the ascendant is through the experience of life that we become closer and closer and closer. You know, it's like the journey of consciousness. At the beginning, it's out there. Most probably you were surrounded by artists and people like being very, you know, kind and relationships and like, you know, beauty and like, you know, art and everything was around you, and you loved it or you know, hated it until, you know, throughout your, you know, your late 20s, your 30s, it's like, oh, I'm always in touch with this energy. Until you're like, oh, maybe that's me, you know. So there is this moment of you know, I rejected my ascendant in Capricorn, like, I remember I was working for an artist in Argentina. I was like 26, something like that. And she was a Capricorn. And she was very, one day I was like crying at home because she was very cold, very distant, very controllable. I mean, it was like a Capricorn, a proper Capricorn that, and I remember thinking, if I have to be like her, I don't want to have an ascendant in Capricorn. I resigned to this ascendant in Capricorn. Like, I don't want to have this. Like, and suddenly I realized, like, this experience is showing me my, you know, the energy that I need to learn, but it's also showing me what I don't want to become. You know, I don't want to be that type of Capricorn. So it's like, it's also, that's also something very important. It's to reflect and to take responsibility and to choose how to use. It's like, I you know, I remember she showed me something that I rejected completely, you know, and like super rigid, super cold, and I was like, I can't be like that, you know. And
because you're a Libra sun as well, aren't you?
Yeah. I'm Libra sun. And yeah, so I was thinking, okay, I don't want to be like her. And then I met other Capricorns that showed me so much integrity and so much, you know, and a relationship with their own sense of authority, that it was very inclusive in terms of like their emotions, their vulnerability, and you know, and so it's a way of like, you know, you can choose. I don't know, like but yeah, the ascendant is super important.
Yeah, I think when I was speaking to Kim as well, she said about a lot of people rejecting their rising sign.
It's a process.
There's a disconnect because, like, I guess, like you said, like, you can't see it. You are the boat.
Exactly.
So you can't kind of like see that. Yeah,
it's like you start kind of bring it to consciousness at the beginning. It plays out in a, you know, it also represents birth. The ascendant represents, it relates to not only your moon, but also the ascendant represents the way that you were born, and it's something, the way I see it, you know, that different astrologers see it differently. It's something to discover, you know, to embrace, and you know, and yeah, because you will always be, you know, I'm not the type of astrologer that says, oh, you will become your ascendant and you leave your sun aside. I mean, like, I think that's like quite nonsense in the sense that.
Is that what some people say then?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, people ask me if that is, you know, if they ask me the question, I guess it's because someone is saying those type of things. But I think that you will always be your sun. It's just that the quest of that sun is super interlinked and woven with your ascendant. And then, of course, you know, it's super important to look at your the ruler of your ascendant.
Right.
You know, so in your case, it's like, okay, you have ascendant in Libra, but your Venus, you know, is in Pisces, is in the 6th house, you know, so that is like it brings a different narrative. It shows that, and then also we need to look at where you have Taurus. I mean, there's many, you know, you can brainstorm your ascendant in many ways, that gives you a more refined understanding of how this ascendant can be, embodied within you. Because that's the thing, is that the ascendant is like, it's our bodies, you know, it represents our body, how we look, you know, how we behave. I remember, like, this is really funny, it has to do with my art practice. Like, I was called once by an art institution here in the UK, because there was an artist coming from Mexico who does this type of performances where she kind of puts kind of sews like in her body, you know, and then she pulls the string, and she has to put it in so she's like completely naked, and like with these hooks that they go through her skin, and the hooks are like pulled with a string to them. I mean, it's like
I've seen it on TV before.
It's a performance. It's a Mexican, very well-known performance artist. So this institution was like arranging all of this performance happening at Chelsea Theatre in Chelsea, and they called me because they needed someone to be the person who hooks the body and like that puts the string back. and it was interesting because they called me. They said that they called me and they were like, yeah, we have Rocio Bolivar is her name, coming, and she's doing this performance, and we are searching for an assistant and someone that can perform with her, and we thought immediately of you. And I was like, I was like, why you thought of me? Like, what? Why do you thought of me? I mean, if you see my art practice, I perform naked,
Right.
my work is very strong emotionally,
Yeah.
but I don't do any kind of harm to my body, or I don't work
Yeah, no
with my
hooks.
body.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, because you are so responsible, so professional, the way you work is so precise, you are very like, and they were describing my ascendant, they
Yeah.
were like describing Capricorn, and I was like, am I? Like, is this? And I ended up doing it because I thought, it was an amazing experience. I thought, okay, so how much can I push myself? Like, I don't know, I just love taking challenges like that, and it was just mind blowing. I mean, that's another story.
Yeah.
but it was yeah, and I was amazed by the way people can, see you. They see you as your ascendant, and sometimes you're like, what the hell did you? Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think that's just classic though, that people always see us differently to how we see ourselves.
Yeah, it's yeah, totally.
Like I saw, what was I doing? A branding thing like ages ago, and I was like, I remember messaging my friends. I was like, I've worked out my colours. It's purple, and they were like, I could have told you that like forever ago. Like, why have you done all this thing? And I was like, oh, okay, that's not new then. But I think the things that we do naturally, and I know we do naturally, or that come across, I think sometimes it's right under our nose. I think I get a lot of like, sometimes I did a client reading actually with someone the other day, and she was like, oh, I just don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what I'm meant to be doing. And I was like, it's the thing that you do so naturally that you love doing, that it doesn't even feel like a thing, and like it's right under your nose. It's like when you think you've lost your phone and you're holding it in your hand.
Oh my god, yeah.
That's how it is. That's how it is. And I think for so many people are like, oh, like what am I here to do, or what's my thing, and we're looking outside and we're looking maybe on Instagram at like, what's that person, should I do this or should I do that? And it's like, what is that thing that you want to do, all like that you could do all day long, or that you're doing at work and it's just like second nature, and like also cut out what are the things that you really don't like doing, honor them, and make sure that they're the things that you're not bringing into this next phase or whatever that you want to be creating, but really cherry picking in a sense of like what comes so naturally to me, like that is my purpose, to be bringing that out. But often we play it down, don't we? We're like, that's just me doing that thing, like that's not like that's not my like that. But there's something in that, like whether it's like that trait within you that you carry through to something else that is what you are meant to be doing. Or also sometimes when things come to us easily, we don't see that as a potential career or a potential thing. Like that's not, again, back to the programming of what we think a job should be, or what we should, like what we're taught in school and different things. I think there's so much in it where people are like, I can't do that as a job, like or that's, people won't pay me to do that, like I just do that for fun, or that's not a thing, where actually it is.
I actually remember when there was 1 month, this was like when I started doing readings, that around 8 people asked me for readings, and I was ignoring. People were asking me, and I was like, no, I don't do, no, I don't do it, no, I for like years, and there was 1 month that around like 7-8 people asked me, and I remember that my partner arrived home, and I was like, okay, I need to talk to you about something. I have all of these people asking me for this. And there was one particularly that really pushed me, that said, Madeleine, I've been waiting for 2 years, can you please do me a reading? And I was like, oh God, like, but like, what do I charge? Like, how do I do it? Like, like at the beginning I could do 1 reading per week, and I was like in bed afterwards for, like, it was like, and it's interesting because, as you say,
so
like,
much though, I think.
Yeah. But it's at the beginning particularly, it's a matter of like learning how to regulate the energy. Yeah,
it's like a new muscle, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. But it was that, I was there in front of my eyes, and I couldn't, and I ignored it, or I didn't want to see it, or I was afraid of taking that path, as you said, like sometimes it's just in front of you, and yeah.
Yeah, like the signs are always there. Even I had it when I got my book deal. I'd never thought I was going to write a book. Like, and I've got, I think my north node, is in Gemini.
Yeah, in the ninth house of publication.
Yeah, so I was like, I never thought I was going to write a book. I like didn't do, like I really struggled at school for the last like couple of years. So like my GCSEs were just like, I sat literally a handful of exams to just go through the process of doing it. And so I was always like, I'm not clever, I'm not educated enough, like all of these things. And I remember going to these like a Hay House event with loads of bloggers, and they were like, yeah, I want to write this book about this thing. And I was like, cool, like I could just about write an Instagram post, like I'm not even bothered about writing a book. And then because I just had such a big limiting belief around it as well, that just wasn't something that I did. And then I got approached by my agent at the time, and then I was like, and asked if I wanted to write a book about crystals. And I was like, yeah, if I was going to write about anything, like I'd write about that, because I love crystals and I've got so much experience with it, and that would be natural, and I could do that. And then all of these different publishers were getting in touch with me. And I was like, what is going on? And then forwarding them to my agent. And I was like, this is so surreal. Like, I've got an agent and people are asking me to write books, like publishers, like this is weird. Yeah. And I think it just comes, like, it's the thing that we get asked. The clues are there, aren't they?
Yeah. And you're going to have your nodal return quite soon.
What does that mean?
You know? So your north node is in Gemini, and the south node is in Sagittarius, and the nodes, they moved to Gemini Sagittarius around June, July, I think. And like we are having the first full moon lunar eclipse in Gemini on the 30th of November, at the end of this month, and then we have a solar eclipse on the 14th in Sagittarius. That's total solar eclipse. And so what it means that because you have the nodes there, it means that when you were born, the north node the eclipses were happening in Gemini and Sagittarius. Right. So every 18 years, 19 years, the nodes, they go back to the same position as the moment of your birth. So you have the first nodal return when you are 18, 19, the second one when you are 37.
36.
Yeah, 36, 37. 37 in your case would be, so you are now, how old are you now?
36 now.
36.
So will it be when I'm 37?
It will happen next year, because your north node is at 9 degrees, and the nodes, they are moving always in retrograde. So I don't know in which degrees now, but it must be like at the end of Gemini. So anyway, so what is happening is that the nodes are going back to that same position. And if we think about the meaning of the nodes, the south node represents what we know, what is comfortable, what we learned in past lives, like what it comes with us, let's say, and what is easy and comfortable. And the north node is as if, like, I like to say that it's as if like the soul sign a contract when you got into this life and said, okay, in this life I'm going to learn the opposite, which is the north node. The north node is what we need to learn and intake and embrace, and is challenging. We always run back to our south node because it's like kind of, in the end are the nodes of the moon. These are mathematical points in the sky that when the sun and the moon cross them, eclipses happen. So it's so what happens is that the nodes also reflect your life purpose, particularly the north node. The north node represents your, it represents your life purpose, but not within the context of the ego. It doesn't mean like I'm going to be, an artist, or I'm going to be a doctor. It goes beyond the ego. It's a bit like kind of something that, and we need to bring from the south node, the qualities, the best, and leave the rest. It's not that we have to forget about the south node. It's very much about bringing the best qualities of it and integrating them with the north node. And it's like, and when the eclipse is happening, and that's the main thing, is that now in the next year and a half, all of the eclipses are going to happen in Gemini Sagittarius. So they will kind of get close to your own nodes, and it will be like, when eclipses happen, that's why eclipses are so powerful, because they shake us to the core, in the sense that they usually, particularly like solar eclipses, they kind of they provoke events in our lives to put us back on track. It's like you start the life, you go like this, and then you start taking a curve and you just deviate from your life purpose. and you go this way, and you know how many times we deviated from where we have to go on. And the eclipses are those moments in life that you know, that is like, oh no, you know, you need to go back on track, you know. And so it's very interesting in your case. I mean, there's clearly loads in terms of communication and your message and your voice, and you know, in relation to traveling and expanding your consciousness, expanding your beliefs, you know. But also, like, yeah, of course, it's in Gemini, which is about writing and lecturing and teaching and media, you know. So it's quite of an important moment in time for you. And you had your Jupiter return as well, just this year. You had your Jupiter return. Yeah, that's why. Like, you just, you know, like you published another book. I mean, there's something that I felt that this year for you has been quite blossoming.
I think.
No, I mean.
Yeah, it has, but like in a weird way, because of lockdown, it's not like kind of blossoming as you would think.
Yeah. I mean, it's in Capricorn. That's why.
Like, it's like very restrained blossoming in a way.
You could see that you were very committed. I mean, the way that I felt
can't switch off.
The way that I felt you through social media was someone that was working very hard, very precise, you know, one break every day, and then you were able to make something expand from that type of work. Because of course, you know, Jupiter is next to Saturn and Pluto. So I mean, there's a lot going on there.
But also, I think that's the interesting thing where you were saying, like, with the North Node going into Gemini, like in June, and that's when I was like, I'm doing the podcast.
Wow. Well,
like,
I mean,
all around then, like how it's all kind of like come through kind of in, I think May, June. I was like, because it was one of those ideas that I'd had, and then I was like, I can't do that. Like, I'm not the kind of person that does a podcast. Who's going to want to listen to me? Like, all of those things. And then I was just like, I was interviewed for someone's podcast, and I really enjoyed it. And I was like, maybe I could do my own. Maybe I could do this. And then I kind of thought that it was just going to be a short project, and now it's just like expanding and getting bigger, which I'm loving, because I'm loving having these conversations. And
because you learn more. I mean, it's very mercurial, you know. It's very and also you have your Mercury in the 7th house and the Sun in the 7th house. You know, it's the 7th house is the house of the other. So there's something, you not only are ascendant in Libra, but you have the Sun in the house that is associated to Libra, and the 7th house is the house of the other, of relationships, you know, in a way, of society as well. So it's as if like you blossom when you are in conversation with someone else. You see your own, you can learn by having Mercury in the 7th house, is that you can learn so much about yourself by being in dialogue and in conversation with other people. It's as if the other person can reflect you back your own thoughts and ideas and thinking, you know. It's really, and also like your Mercury is doing an opposition to Pluto, so you're very interested in speaking, you know, about the mysteries of life and the occult, and you know, there is clearly you know, the power of words, the power of language. You know, it's you should definitely dig into that, you know, and take it, and also like think about in the next coming year and a half, like how you can actually you know, how can you communicate in ways that are unimaginable now for you, you know. And stay open to find new venues, new creative ways of expressing yourself.
Interesting.
It's super interesting.
It's so interesting to just see how it all plays out. Like seeing it, what the transition is, or the alignment, and then actually how it's playing out down here.
Because then also your Jupiter is going to move into your 5th house, and of course then Saturn, no? But that's going to be an interesting thing. Of expansion within the area of creation, you know, like the 5th house is the house of children, it's the house of your creative self, your artistic, you know, your kind of, and also romance, you know. So and you have the moon there, so it will be like a time of of more of like an unusual expansion within the context of creation in itself. No. Yeah.
Will next year be easier?
But,
Is next year going to be easier for me?
Yeah, I mean, there's still like loads of things going on, but yeah. I mean, that's a really nice thing coming up.
Yeah, I bet people listening to this are like, I want to know what, like, is my next year going to be easier? Like, what is going on?
Yeah, at the moment you have Saturn squaring your Mercury and Pluto squaring your Mercury as well. So there's a lot of changes in the way you're thinking. You know, there's a lot of changes in your interest, in the way you think, in how you process information, in how you want to communicate. You are really, you know, thinking a lot. I mean, there's like, you know, with Pluto, there's a bit of like having a urge, desire to communicate, and then like, I know, an obsessive desire to know as well. You know, there's like absorbing a lot. But then at the same time, your mind is very focused and very structured, and once, you know, particularly now, you know, the square with Saturn is at 0 degree at the moment. So you can be very, you can find a lot of like also self-limiting beliefs can come up, you know, like all of that for you to transcend. But yeah, at the end of the day is, it's kind of bringing kind of a new structure to the way you think. Yeah,
I'm definitely feeling that. Just like before we started recording, that I was saying to you, I was like, I kind of feel like not lost, but like I want to do things but can't, like haven't got that clarity yet, or like what to do. But then at the same time, I know what I need to do. Like, and like it's that thing of just like, eat your dinner and then you can have your dessert. Like tie up those loose ends, like finish what you started, and then the next things will come through.
Totally.
It's that it's easy to kind of like, we all want the prize, don't we? But not the work that has to like be done, like and I think for so many people we're coming out this side of 2020 feeling so different to how we did at the beginning of the year. Like our values have shifted, the way we want to work, the way that we want to live, like so has changed so much. And what I wanted at the beginning of January, what my vision for the year, and now how I want it to move is so different.
Me too. I mean, it's a before and after. I mean, this year it's been like wild. I think it has been, and it has been also very pushy year, in the sense that it's as if like, so change happened in a way that it was like, okay, now there was no time to process things, you know, like it's as if like, well, now you have to like wake up now, like this fast, you know. And it's just been so transformative and so powerful in you know, it's for me, it's an amazing year to do inner work, you know, to do therapy, to look within, and to let go, you know, because of course as the structures of society are collapsing, you know, our inner rigidity and, you know, kind of is also, you know, like all of our like you know, habits, behaviors that you know, that in a way trapped us, you know, they are like in some way being dismantled. And that is like hard, because also we have to go through we are going through a period of loss, of grief, of all of these dreams that we had, like what you say, like in January I thought I wanted this and this and this and this, and you know, letting go that you know, it's you know, it brings so many emotions that are conflictive, you know. And that's also another thing that astrology, I think, is really beautiful, is that it gives you the space. When you follow the astrology month by month, you know that the sky is also giving you the space for you to mourn, you know, like to feel all of that, because it's not about only looking at the positive, or like what can I do positively, you know. It's also saying like, oh wow, okay, so I need to pause, or I need to give space for all of these feelings, because by accepting those feelings we can really move forward in a much more complete way. rather than like, oh, I don't feel that, everything is fine, I ignore, I go back forwards, you know, like, you know, that it will catch you, it will come
do
back
that.
to you.
That's what I mean. It's like it's plump, like just like, you do this, do your homework, do this, and you're like, but I want to go out, I want to do that. It's like, no, do this. That's just like how I'm feeling at the moment. But with like, as you were just like describing, like with like that feeling, like what we need to be feeling and everything that's coming up for us, like I feel like that just slides really nicely into like the moon, and like how the moon teaches like us how to feel our feelings and to have that awareness of like what nourishes us and gives us that kind of sense of stability and security. And like you said, like with everything that's going on, our moon is being triggered.
Totally.
So triggered. But like, how do you work with the moon, like with your kind of astrology practice?
So like so the moon for me is the moon cycle is clearly like, you know, is as many of you might know, it's like a cycle that we can work with it consciously in a monthly, you know, within the time frame of how that we live, you know. Then there's other cycles like the heartbeat or of our breath that are so fast that we can't grasp their repetition, you know, to do something with it. And then there's like cycles like Saturn and Pluto meeting, you know, like cycles that are so big, or even some that are like even bigger, you know, so that then they're kind of out of our reach to be able to work with them. We might understand them, but we can't work with them. So like the power of the lunar cycle is that we can work with it consciously. We can, you know, follow it. And so what I love following the lunations, you know, the new moon is my favorite. it's definitely my favorite. You know, it's like, I love the poetry around the lunar cycle, you know, which is that the moon, you know, that we have the sun and the moon moves faster. So the moon kind of meets the sun and it generates a new moon. And a new moon is, you know, it's as if like the sun kind of implants something on that moon, and the moon continues its journey. And that moment of the new moon, when the moon is invisible to us, where we can't see it, it's as if like we are lost, we are in the dark, you know, we don't have any light, we don't have the guidance of the sun. So the new moon for me is like a moon that is very intuitive, that is very unconscious, that there's a seed that gets planted, but we don't know yet what that is, you know, we are unconscious of that seed. And it's like, I always think about the new moon as a moment where we need to really protect ourselves, and I try to take like days before, you know, to rest, to sleep, and to feel my body. Because that's the thing, is imagine that on a new moon, it's like literally being in the middle of a forest where there's a lot of mist, you know, and you're there, and what you need to do is like, okay, you know, you need to go back to your body and say, okay, what do I sense? You know, what do I listen? What do I smell? You know, it's very intuitive. It's not like you know, a new moon is not like to kind of go and start taking action, because you can't see, you know, you can't see. So it's like, you know, it's that moment of, and that's when the unconscious phase for me of the lunar cycle starts, which is from the new moon to the full moon. It's a waxing phase. It's the most unconscious phase. It's when the moon slowly starts gaining light, you know, so slowly starts gaining awareness and understanding of the purpose that the sun kind of gave her in a way. So the first kind of moment, the first quarter, it represents in some way, you know, like, you know, it's like kind of brainstorming. You have a project and it's like, you know, like, and you're brainstorming, okay, I'm going to do this, and then there's this other, and like, I want this colors, and what you're like kind of doing like the whole aesthetics, you know, like kind of doing the creative side of it. And then when we have the first quarter moon, which actually it represents that the sun, because the lunar cycle is all about the relationship between the sun and the moon. It's like the luminaries, you know, it's like, you can't think about the moon without the sun, you know, they are in this constant relationship, you know, constant dialogue. So when the moon arrives to this first quarter moon, you know, when we look at the sky and it's like half, it's a moment of crisis, let's say. It's a moment where there's a 90-degree angle, it's a square angle, which actually there's a bit of tension, and it's a moment where the moon it's like, oh, I know what I want to do next. You know, it's like creates a tension, creates a crisis that activates the moon, in the sense that the moon wants to be more rebellious. You know, it's like the moment where like the moon phase to the full moon, it's like the most adolescent, let's call it, you know, like the one that wants to kind of, okay, I want to do it my way, I want to do it this, you know, it kind of, it rebels a bit from the sun. And knows what, you know, it's like, okay, I'm doing this project, I'm filming this video, okay, so I put the tripod here, you know, I get my crew, you know, there is more action. And then you get to the full moon. That is the moment of the culmination, the most visible, you know, there's this opposition between them both. So it's as if like for the moon, the purpose that the sun kind of implanted in the new moon, it becomes visible. It's like, okay, here it is, you know. So that's why a full moon is very powerful, because, and it relates to relationships, because any opposition in astrology is a relationship. And yeah, a moment of visibility, of exposure. The moon is completely lit. Nothing can be left. We can't hide anything. It's like it's all there. So, you know, usually things come to the surface. Everything comes to the surface. Everything, you know, our emotions get like really strong. You know, I know that in the police and in the hospitals, they put more people, you know, during this time of
they know.
Yeah, they know that it just like, you know, it brings out so much. And then we start the waning phase, which is the most conscious phase. It's a phase that is more, you know, it's a phase that is more concrete, more mental, if we want to say, like kind of there's something about understanding, you know. It's the first, particularly the last quarter phase. It represents a moment of like, so this went well, this went wrong, you know, I learned this. I did this, you know, it's like you mature. It's a moment of maturation. It's a moment of like harvesting, you know, and that's, you know, that's the last square is that moment of like integrating that harvest and maturity. And then the last, you know, the last part until you get to the next new moon is about letting go and releasing space and, you know, and like kind of going back in, you know, for a next new moon. So that's, and I like to follow the moon in the context of astrology, in the sense that I like to follow the moon in each sign and how it goes within my chart site. For example, like years ago, it blew my, and that's when I started actually doing it. It blew my mind. Like I noticed like several months in a row when the moon was in Capricorn, because suddenly there was one day, because my moon is in Capricorn next to my south node in the 12th house. So it's like quite like there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of like, I don't know, it's just it's such a sore area of my chart. And like I'm very wounded. So it's like whenever the moon is in Capricorn and gets and looks and taps into all of that, I remember like one day I was like, kind of crying. I felt very like I'm like rubbish, and I had all of this like I'm like not good enough. I'm like, you know, like I had all of this. I was like collapsing, and I was like, where is the moon?
Yeah,
you know, and the moon was on top of it. And
what was it doing?
and it's so interesting, because that's when I was like, oh wow. So yeah, of course, it's activating my lunar fears and mechanisms and everything. And then the following month it happened again, and I actually, you know, and I experienced very Capricorn, you know, situations. Even like recently, I went to a place and it was freezing cold, and everything was a bit limiting, and then I just, you know, and I was like, okay, yeah, the moon is in Capricorn, you know, like it's like it brings. So if you follow the lunar, you know, if you follow the moon in your chart, if you have your chart and you can follow the houses that is going through, then you start getting a much more refined understanding of the impact. And when, of course, the new moon and the full moon happens in your chart, I mean, and what is activating in terms of planets. But yeah, I don't work with the moon in a very ultra conscious way. Like I'm very intuitive.
That's the whole thing, like, with the moon anyway.
Yeah, true. true.
That intuitive feeling, kind of, rather than it being a conscious thing.
Yeah. So like for me, the moon is, I mean, if we go like towards the moon signs and like what, you know, the moon astrologically represents, of, you know, if the sun is the father, the moon is the mother. You know, the sun is what we are conscious, the moon is what we are unconscious. The sun is what we want, the moon is what we need. The sun is the future, the moon is the past. You know, we have all of this, you know, the sun, if we want to get into the binaries, which I don't like, but like, you know, the sun is the masculine, the moon is the feminine, or the yang energy and the yin energy, you know, like, so they are like really, you know, they're very different to each other. And so the moon represents, yes, the past, the upbringing, you know, like how you receive love when you were a child, how you know, what makes you feel safe and protected and nurtured, and like, and then you grow older and you want to give love in that way, and you want to receive love in that way, you know, and the way that your mom gave you, or your environment, or your caretaker, you know. So it's like, so but then of course there's so many ways of loving and giving love. There's not just one way. So that is when particularly when I do readings, I kind of always speak about these three aspects of the moon that for me are very important. That one is that the moon is a need, you know, a need that is key to nourish and accept it and learn about it and take it everywhere. It's like, I'm here with my need, you know, like, so it's like, I meet you, and if my needs are not met, I need to be loyal to my needs, because we are, you know, we live in a society, well, we were living in a society, I think this is going to change.
Yeah, who knows what we're living in now.
Yes, exactly. Where like we used to live our needs aside, you know, to please the other, to gain this, to search for something outside us. You know, we paid more attention to the security that a job gave us, or like, you know, so things that were outside, were like, actually we need to earn and gain and embrace our own sense of security within us, and that's the moon. So it's really, you know, so that's the thing. So first is there's a need that we need to be loyal to. Then there's a talent. The moon always represents a talent that is something that we are good, that comes natural, that is organic, and that we can put it out there in the world in different kind of, you know, in different ways. And then the moon represents an emotional mechanism, which is a bit of a complex concept, but I want to explain it because I feel that it can really help people understand, like, in a deeper way, their moon. Is that the emotional mechanism is like, okay, so I receive love in a specific way through my mom. And so I'm like, okay, so this is love. So then you grow older and you want to, as I said, you want to give love and receive love that way. But whenever you feel afraid or unprotected or unnerted, you're in a crisis, you know, you're going through like a really kind of strong emotional thing. So what happens is that the moon wakes up. And when the moon wakes up, you know, in a very unconscious way, because everything, how we absorb the moon is ultra unconscious. So in a very unconscious way, the moon desperately goes back to mom, you know, goes back to behaviors, habits, patterns, you know, activities, whatever that relates to what gave you safety when you were a child. And that is what, like, you know, it brings like this emotional, it kind of makes you feel better, you know. To go to the moon is to go to a refuge, is to go to a safe place, is go to a place where like you can breathe and you are not like, you don't feel that kind of threat anymore, or pain or crisis. And it's good to go once in a while, but if you go very often, you know, it becomes a repetition, it becomes a habit, and you get trapped in this lunar, you know, that can be very recessive, how to say, I don't know if it's recessive, it can be very, you can get trapped in this lunar phase. And what about your sun? What about your ascendant? And what, you know, like there's so many other things that are not expressed because you are in this safe cocoon. That is great when you're going through like a tough, you know, to go once in a while. But if you're always there, it's danger zone.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that we need to learn to recognize this mechanism. We need to learn to observe when is it that we are doing this, and how we can start slowly breaking this mechanism, you know, and understanding it and experiencing it, and and allow other ways of being loved to emerge from you and for you, you know. It's because then otherwise we just stay in just this one thing, you know.
Yeah,
I don't know if it was clear.
Yeah, what I'm thinking is like you've got a buffet and you're just eating one thing, and you're like, but this is what I like, this is what, and they're like, but try this, and then you're like, oh, Well, I haven't had that before. It's that
Yeah.
kind of, that's the vision I'm getting as you're like explaining it.
Yeah,
And
because,
also like codependency and addiction.
totally.
Like,
Yeah, and toxicity. Yeah, and also like once you recognize a mechanism, you start expressing the talent. The talent is expressed once you see the mechanism. Otherwise, you're falling on the mechanism all the time. I mean, I can.
So would you say like the mechanism is the thing that you fall back on?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's where you go, you know, as a refuge. But the thing is that if it's repeated, you know, if it's all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like for example, if we look at the moon in Aries.
Yeah.
I mean, shall we go through the signs?
Yeah. Because I'm sure everyone listening is like, what is mine? Like, tell me, Madeleine. Like, I want to know. But yeah, I think because it will make it like. Well, it's one of the reasons why I love the way that you teach and that you explain things, because it just brings it to life, and it's like, oh yeah. So yeah, let's go through the signs.
No, because it's something that is a concept that it will make so much sense when we look at sign by sign. Like it's just it's simpler than how it sounds maybe now that I kind of, but you know, imagine this child that is born with moon in Aries. You know, the energetic quality that protect this baby is like vital, energetic, dynamic, you know, centered in action. You know, let's imagine also, I kind of start with like a bit of visual, so we kind of put this in context. So I always like to kind of imagine like the childhood sorry to interrupt, but first I need to say,
I love it, you're interrupting yourself.
I need to clarify. No, it's just that it's super important. I need to clarify one thing, which is that I'm going to go through the signs of the moon in a very archetypal way. So we are just looking at the moon in a sign. Please, to everyone who is listening, consider that your moon is falling in a house, is aspecting other planets. You know, you have Cancer maybe in the cusp of another house. All of this is a combination of your moon, you know. So if you think that there's something about your moon that doesn't resonate, it's because there might be another planet next to your moon or squaring your moon, or you know, like there's other flavors, there's other narratives, layers of narratives that are. So I need to say that because the way that I'm going to talk about the moons are very archetypal. You know, it's very much about bringing the energy of the sign in relation to the moon. Anyway, so let's imagine this child that has this vital, you know, dynamic energy, and there's a mother, you know, that is energetic, decisive, maybe even a bit invasive, you know.
So this is Aries Moon.
Aries Moon. Yeah. Yes, moon in Aries. And it's like a house where there's a lot of movement, there's discussions, there's like, you know, now you go and you do, you know, jockey, and then now you go horse riding, and you know, it's a mother that is, you know, very decisive, very energetic. And where imagine that the moon represents what we need to find, where we need to find calm and nourishment. And that person from very young age kind of absorbs like tension, you know, action, you know, movement, you know. So suddenly what is calm is actually movement, action, you know, like. So if we think, what does a person with moon in Aries needs? You know, they need, you know, to be connected with their desire. They need passion. They need tension. You know, they need to fall in love with someone that needs to be adventurous, that can't be like lying down on the sofa watching Netflix every day. You know, like they need to be with, you know, people with moon in Aries, they need to connect from, you know, in a very passionate way, in a very active way, in a very adventurous, and that wants surprises, you know, that is spontaneous, that is, like that kind of can move around, you know, that is not, that the energy, the desire is not stopped. Then there's this talent, you know, the talent of the moon in Aries is that is very good at initiating. You know, Aries is a cardinal sign that is really good at starting, commencing projects. So there is this talent of being an initiator, of being very spontaneous, adventurous, that and that is also very contagious, you know, when you're next to someone with moon in Aries, is like, and then they're so in touch with their desire, and they say, let's go and do this, you know, then, you know, to other people around, it inspires others. That's any fire moon has this kind of thing of inspiring others. But then the emotional mechanism, you know, whenever they feel afraid or unprotected or nurtured, the moon wakes up and goes back to mom, that goes back to childhood. So what gave them safety when they were young was action, doing, moving, was like, so sometimes to avoid the emotional turmoil within, they cover it with doing non-stop things. It's like, I used to have a flatmate many years ago who has had moon in Aries, and I found it really fascinating to observe her, because whenever she was, I remember once particularly, she was going through quite a lot. She was breaking up with her boyfriend, and like there was a lot of things happening to her. And it was Saturday, and I wake up like 10:30, 11, something like that. And she just woke up at 6:30, went to the flower market, then came back. Then she she just did something in the garden. Then she, and then she went and cooked some, it was like non-stop kind of action. And I was like, wow, clearly there's something going on with her. It's like in some way it's as if that kind of blocks, and also they can get irritated, impatient, when they're like going through an emotional, it comes out the most like kind of impatient and irritable and explosive side, because they need, it's like home is tension in some way. Home is, and that's why in love they need fire and they need passion, but also they need like some a little bit of competition or some sort of like I don't know. So it's very interesting. It's very dynamic moon, and that's another thing. It's like for people that have moon in Aries to identify when is it that you get into doing as a way of feeling safe, and when is it that you initiate as a talent. It's about discerning between these two.
It's so nuanced, isn't it?
It's so nuanced. And all the moon and in all of its context is so nuanced. I mean, I even like was thinking when we were looking about the, like for example, you were born with a crescent waning moon, but if we think about before your birth, which was the previous new moon that happened before your birth. And that says so much about your moon. It's like if searching for the new moon previous to one birth, it's like in your case, most probably due to 28th of March, and because the moon had to go through the whole cycle nearly, most probably your new moon happened in Pisces.
Right.
So you might relate with, the flavor of a moon in Pisces. In my case, my new moon happened in Libra. It's
wow.
So I mean, that's just to bring. It's like another. But like just.
I'm gonna have to get you back on.
But I have just so much. I have literally like these last days I had so many ideas of things, but
brilliant.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on. I don't know. Do you want to say anything?
No, I'm just taking it all in. So interesting.
It is. It's
because I think I just remember when I was at the workshop with you and we went over, and I was like, I just don't want this to end. The only reason I want this to end is because I want to find out what my boyfriend's birth time was, so I can double check his moon sign. But apart from that, keep going. So next would be what, moon in Taurus?
Moon in Taurus, yeah. So the moon in Taurus is exalted. Exalted means that the moon is very comfortable. So we have the moon is in domicile, which means at home, in Cancer, clearly, because it rules Cancer. But then when the moon is in Taurus, it's like going to the best friend house. When you go to your best friend house, you actually feel even more comfortable. You go to the toilet without asking permission, so the moon is like, oh my God, I'm comfy here. So the energetic quality that protects a baby that is born with moon in Taurus is very slow, very solid, very connected with the material world, the body, it's very placid, very sensual. It's usually like, I always like to imagine the birth of someone with moon in Taurus that is born and immediately goes to the mom's body, and the smell of the mother, the texture of the mother, the warmth, is like all messages of love, and then again, later on in life, it will be like food, and everything that is sensorial, like presents, you know. It's like I like to think about this baby going back home and being in this room that has lots of presents and lots of decoration and this wallpaper, you know. And then a mother that is like, oh, I put you a little bit of chocolate in your, you know, like there is this kind of and a present because it's your first day at school, and another present because it's your second day at school. I mean, just to kind of, I mean, it's very archetypal, but it's like thinking about, you know, those are where clear messages of love. So what does the moon in Taurus need? So they need physical contact. They need like, you know, an economic and financial stability. They need to have, you know, their home is their like sanctuary in a way, you know. Their home is like a place where they can like sleep and eat, and they need that. They need someone that they have this physical contact, that they have this, that the senses are like heightened, that there is a sense of comfort and stability and safety, you know. It's well, of course it's linked to food, to all of the pleasures of the body. And there's a talent there, that the person that has moon in Taurus, is the talent is that they're very affectionate, you know, that they understand the needs of the others. They're very connected with their own bodies. They are very good at working with materials, you know. They can be good at like cooking or kind of aesthetics things. They're very into fashion, you know, because Taurus is a sign that relates to, well, it's ruled by Venus, but also is an earth sign. So it's the beauty of the body, of the senses, you know. And then there is the mechanism, which, you know, when a moon in Taurus is afraid or unprotected, you know, like they go back to mom. And that going back to mom is like going and having a massage, or going shopping, or buying like a cake or something that they, you know, or like sleeping until late, or, you know, being with the duvet up to here. And like there's this kind of sense of, I'm not moving, you know. And, you know, it's like this solidity of the energy gets like a bit stuck, let's say. And because it can bring some sort of inertia, you know, and possessiveness, like this is mine, you know, when the moon is activated. I have an example which I think that it will like bring this very clear image, which many years ago I was in Argentina, and I was working for this artist that I mentioned before, and I was going through like quite of a tough time. And a friend of mine who has moon in Taurus calls me and says, Madeleine, I pick you up and let's go for lunch. So then she comes with her car. So I go down and I get inside her car, and she's like, oh, I brought you this piece of cake that was left at home just in case you want, and also an apple just in case you want something fresh. And I bought in New York this rescue remedy. You have to drink like four drops. I give it to you, and now we're going for lunch, and I invite you, you know, like, so I remember thinking, God, she loves me. You know what I mean? It was like, she was just expressing love by like inviting me food, by bringing me the rescue remedy. Like she hugged me like for like, I don't like this. And like it was all like grabbing my hand, you know, like there was this, it was really, I was thinking like, wow. I don't know.
I'm just taking this in. I'm like,
because it's a, you know, the main thing here is to, you know, the moon in Taurus, the challenge, I would say, is when the inertia kicks in. You know, it's when the possessiveness, or this thing about I'm staying here, I'm not moving, and there's no movement. There's no, you know, and that's because the fear creates that, like, you know, it becomes like this bull that is stubborn and that doesn't want to move. So that's another thing to observe, because that's the thing, is if you learn to observe yourself and see what happens to your body. I mean, when we get to the moon in Capricorn, I will explain how I experienced, because for me, it was very important to first observe what happens to my body as a starting point, because it's just so unconscious. We just sometimes do it without realizing, you know, it comes so like natural. It's very primitive. It's very raw. So the moon in Gemini, I mean, let's imagine this baby is born in a family where there's so much like energy, like this. It's about movement and multiplicity and words and explanation, you know. There's like association, multiplicity, like communication is a big thing. We can think there was an environment where being quick, being curious, you know, knowing was very valued, you know, at home. It was like, you know, a mother, let's also like, I like to imagine like a mother saying like, yeah, no, you would not believe like Maria is just so smart. She learns so fast. She learns to read before everyone else at school, you know, like, so usually there's this unconsciously, this girl is like, if I'm smart, if I'm curious, if I know the answer, mom loves me. And I mean, those are the things that are happening in like very internal kind of, you know, it's like, if I know, if I have the answer, if I'm curious, if I do well, you know, with the intellect, you know, usually it could also be that there's a very intellectual father. Anyway, so the moon, what does this moon in Gemini needs? And they need dialogue. You know, they need communication, they need words, they need to understand. They you know, they want to kind of, they fall in love with people that spark their thinking, their mind, their intellect, that they can learn from, that they can have fun, that they can be playful with. You know, they clearly, they, you know, they can't be with someone that can't communicate, you know, that can't express, you know, they need that, all of that. And then there is, of course, the talent, that is, of course, the talent of writing, of lecturing, of expressing, you know, their voice and communicating, and their learning capacities are so strong as well. And then the mechanism, this is very interesting, and this relates to all air signs, which is that when the moon is in an air sign, you know, let's think about it from a Gemini perspective, it's that when they feel afraid or unprotected or nurtured, they go back to mom, you know? And going back to mom, you know, that usually the moon is in, you know, it's at home in Cancer. So the moon closes, but air is not an element that closes. It's an element that opens. So when the moon goes back to mom, with the moon in Gemini goes back to mom, it's a moon that opens up, and opening up is actually closing.
Right.
Does that make sense? Maybe you recognize this as a moon in Aquarius.
Yeah.
You know? Which is that I don't feel okay, I socialize.
Yeah. Hello.
because actually opening, you're closing. So what, you know, like a moon in Gemini particularly is like does many things at the same time, like multitasking, thinking, doing and saying 3 different things at the same time, searches for explanations and theories and concepts. You know, they are like, instead of feeling what is happening, because that's the thing, is there's a difficulty in accessing the feeling in itself.
Yeah.
They access through understanding, through kind of thinking about it. You know, it's like through words, is that how they reach their emotions and their feelings. You know, and anything that can't be put into words can be scary for a moon in Gemini. You know, it can feel like, you know, it paralyzes them.
Yeah.
Because they need that kind of, it's a very mental, very kind of intellectual moon.
Yeah, I'm just thinking from Gemini, if they were ghosted, you know, when someone just stops talking to them, that must be, I mean, it's horrible anyway, but Moon in Gemini that wants to talk about things, and then to be cut off like that would probably be the worst. Yeah,
I have lots of friends with Moon in Gemini, and I have one particularly that I remember she saying, when someone asks me a question and I don't know, I invent. You know? And I was like, oh my God, that's the Moon in Gemini. You know, that it's like I invent because I need to be loved. It's like, if I'm not smart, if I'm not curious, if I don't know anything, like my mom is Moon in Gemini. I mean, this is like a clear example. Yeah. She, you know, like she told that, I mean, it's amazing to have a mother with Moon in Gemini, because she's just like storytelling all the time, like telling stories, like knowing. She sends me, even like now after like 10 years of me living in London, like emails like every 2 days with information that maybe I should like to read, you know, like,
oh wow.
Yeah, and she's like a dictionary in English, in French, and in Spanish. It's like I remember being a kid and being like, "Mom, what does this mean?" And she just like druk, you know.
Yeah.
And knowing and knowledge and, you know, studying, you know, like she supported me coming to do my MA, and I know because she values education so much, you know.
Yeah.
So and she's like nonstop, you know, moving, and like her mind is very kind of mental approach, you know, to life in a way. But yeah, it's like also when the moon in Gemini gets a bit afraid, they get very chatty. It's like, you know, like they and that's also something that maybe it's a good way of looking at it from you know, it's like in the sense of you know, when you feel afraid, like observing yourself and noticing you know, how much you need that conversation, how much you need that connection with people. Because of course people love me because I'm smart. It's not true. It's a memory. It's an ancient memory. You know, like it's like all of that, you know, it's you know, like the moon in Aries, people love me because I'm courageous, you know, or because I'm daring, you know, and that I, you know, and because I know what I want, you know, they also would like you if you can't do something one day, you know, they will also like you if you don't know something, you know, for a moon in Gemini. So yeah.
That's so interesting. I'm trying to think. I think my brother's moon in Gemini, which is interesting. But I'm trying to think of it. But yeah. But okay, so we've just done Gemini. So Cancer.
Moon in Cancer, which, as I said before, is in domicile, like it's at home. So here the basic energy that projects the child is like the archetypal familiar, you know, it's like tenderness and warmth and symbiosis with the mother. Protection, you know, for this baby is like softness and intimate as well. This is like a child that has this huge inner world. This is all of the moon that are in water signs, you know, there's a huge inner world. And the moon in Cancer is like the child that closes their eyes and dreams about what I'm going to do when I'm like, you know, when I'm older. And they can be 40 and they can be closing their eyes and dreaming what I'm going to do. You know, there's a bit of like the, you know, as the moon in Gemini is the eternal student, you know, the moon in Cancer is the eternal child, you know, the eternal daughter. Or so of course a moon in Cancer needs, you know, needs familiarity, needs like a connection that is an emotional connection, you know, needs to feel at home, you know, with whoever they are. You know, it's a moon that doesn't need so much words, you know, it's more about feelings and an emotional connection. And of course there's this talent of being very protective of their family, of their nation, of, you know, very kind of patriotic, let's say, and super sensitive. And there's this emotional beauty that they have, and a lot of empathy and compassion with the other. But then the emotional mechanism is fantasy, you know, it is refuge. It's like going back to the womb and being there in the mother's womb with and dreaming, you know, and you know, it's as if interiority, they close so much. It's like think about the crab, you know, is very tender and soft and you know, imaginative and delicate within, but it's like harsh. So whenever a moon in Cancer, they feel afraid, they close, and what they show is the shell. So that's why, like, it's very difficult for other people to reach in when someone with a water moon, you know, it's a moons that are in water, they're a bit inaccessible when they, even for their rational side, it's difficult to get in, you know, even for their own rational side, it's like kind of, you know, it's struggles to access. And so it's like, for example, my eldest brother has moon in Cancer, and it's so interesting. Like, he went to a specific school, the same as I did. I went to this school my whole life, but he went until he was 10. And then he moved to another school, and then to another school, you know. But today he's 40, and his friends are the same friends that he had. Like, his main group of friends are the friends that he had before he was 10. The first friends that he had are still his friends today.
Wow.
And that's like the thing, is that the people that were at the beginning in your life, you know, your environment, your friends, your family, are the ones that impact the people with moon in Cancer the most, in a way. He's someone that blossoms, and he's amazing. I mean, he's a Leo, you know, but like, he literally like kind of shines even more when he feels at home, when he feels that there's familiarity, where he feels protected and safe, you know, within the environment. That's when, like, you know, he can express himself more. And he lives 15 minutes away from my mom, you know. So I mean, it's like very kind of symbolic things that I bring these images and this kind of symbolism to just bring more of an understanding. But and usually there's this feeling, you know, particularly when we go to the moon, when we go to the mechanism of the moon, we usually feel that the other person about, you know, left us, or the other person, you know. But that's another thing about bringing consciousness to what am I doing that I am closing, because that's the thing, is when we feel afraid, we are closing. Like now with everything that is going on, if the moon gets, you know, how are we closing? You know, the moon in Cancer closes by getting into this inner world of emotions and sensitivity. You know, the moon in Gemini is like, I'm both like, you know, my mom, I remember she came here to London, and one day I meet her like in central London with moon in Gemini, and she says, I'm so happy. I met her at Tate Modern. No? She says, I'm so happy. I just bought 6 books. I'm like, and I was like, what is happening, Mom? Like, what is happening emotionally that you're like buying so many books? I mean, of course, you know, she loves reading, and but you know, how much are we searching you know, in like literal ways like this, or, you know, in more simple, you know, because it can be very subtle also, the moon.
Yeah. That's so interesting. 7 books. Straight away, what's going on?
Yeah, I was like, there's something, you know, you're getting something.
She's like, I've just bought 7 books, I'm really happy. And you're like, no, Mum.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's interesting. It's like, it's when you start picking up, you know, for me, it's like clearly a message of that something that she is homesick, or you know, like something is happening to her. So then if we move to moon in Leo, you know, wow. So here we have like a child that I like to think about, like let's imagine like a child with this radiant energy that resonates with everything around them, you know, that is a child that centralizes the energy as well. Like usually they are the eldest, or they are a child that was very much expected, in the terms of being like, my dad is moon in Leo, and he was the first generation of an Argentinian. My grandfather was French, my grandmother Italian, both immigrants coming into Argentina. And then they had the first boy, the first Argentine, you know, like, and it was very, when a child is very expected, like very wanted. Also they fill the room with vitality, you know, and usually there's a mother that is very, you know, we can think about a mother that is very potent, that is very active, and a family where the female figures are very predominant, in the sense that they are very admired and venerated and special. So this child, it centers the energy at home when they are born, and so they feel so special when they're kids, you know, they feel as if they're unique, they're the favorite, you know, they're special. And imagine that the sun rules Leo. So this is a very tricky moon, and if I be doing a reading, I will expand in many ways, but like what I mean is, like, people love me, you know, like a moon in Gemini, people love me because I'm smart, you know, like, just to say, a moon in Cancer, people love me because I'm protective and I'm emotional, you know. The moon in Leo is like, people love me because it's me. It's ruled by the sun. It's because it's me, you know. It's like, it's as if like it's given for granted in a way, or it's given not for granted, but like there's this thing about I'm important, and if I'm not important, it's as if people don't love me. So if we look at the needs, and so someone that has moon in Leo needs attention, you know, needs love and drama and romance, and needs to have fun. I mean, needs is a sign that is so loyal and noble and generous and from the heart and creative, you know. So it needs, you know, they fall in love with someone that is very solar, that you know, and that makes them feel special, you know, and they want to feel, you know, that specialness, you know, they want to feel that admiration, you know, they want to listen to the applauses, because that is like, oh, they love me, you know, they love me. So the talent is that, well, Leo is one of the signs that inspires the most to others. Like the talent of the moon in Leo is so contagious in terms of inspiration, and make people connect with their hearts as well. And they emanate confidence and creativity and talent. Like they are very, very good creatively. But the mechanism is when they go back to the moon, it's when they call attention nonstop, for example, you know. It's like they call attention as a way of wanting to feel safe. Because as I mentioned before, if I'm not important, I'm not loved. You know, so, and there's this, as I mentioned before, there's this historic memory of being the center of attention. You know, so the moon in Leo is also like kind of recognizing that whenever you feel afraid and protected, there's a need of like calling attention, because you need that people looking at you as a way of like, so it's it's a very interesting one, because it has it's the most difficult to separate, because it's like, you know, and that's why for a moon in Leo it could be a bit hard to see the other person, because there's something about my emotions, my feelings, me, I'm important. And if I'm not, if you are with, let's say I have moon in Leo, and you suddenly, you know, you stop and you say like, sorry, Madeleine, I have something else to do. We will not be able to do this podcast. You know, like, and I have moon in Leo, it's like, you know, like, well, any moon would be devastating, no? But like, but a moon in Leo is like, you hurt my heart. You hurt my heart. I mean, it's a different thing, you know. You hurt my ego, you hurt my pride, you hurt. That's why, like, when a moon in Leo gets harmed, there's no way back, you know. It's just the heart got broken. It's so linked to the heart. So, but that's what makes them also like beautiful, you know. They're so like creative and so warm, and when they love. I mean, it's a lion, you know. There's something about so warm, so beautiful as well. So yeah, so that's a moon in Leo. I don't have any anecdote about this. So I try to think about people that I know, that I have a bit of a story to tell. So then if we move to moon in Virgo, so here we are of course moving into an energy that relates to order, no? And having emphasis in the details, and being practical, and being useful, and being tidy. It's kind of even more important than, you know, asking, expressing, and taking. You know, it's you know, usually there's a mother that values, you know, like, it's like the mother that says like, oh, look how mature my son or my daughter is, you know. It's and so yes, it's a mother that values all of this, you know, and is very into the details and very pragmatic. And so so the need of a moon in Virgo is the need of having the well-being of the body, you know, the well-being of health, you know, having a good nutrition as well. Is someone that loves by knowing the details. Like when they fall in love in a way that they express it in a very humble way, in a way that is not like Leo, I'm the drama, the flowers, I'm here, I love you, and like, you know, there's all of this drama with Leo. With Virgo, there's no drama. On the contrary, it's like, it's the partner that buys you the biscuits that you like and doesn't say that they bought it, you know. They just put it in the cupboard, and they are looking at the practical, useful, pragmatic ways of helping, because they're in service. Someone that loves to be useful, loves to be in service. You know, it's you know, that likes like the daily routine and the rituals and the, you know, and like, you know, has all of, they wake up and they have this like, and I do this in the bathroom, and then I go, you know, they have all of these and then there's the talent that they're like super good producers. They are like very good at organizing, making planning, making things happen, you know, refining, being very efficient, and being in service. It's like the key, it's the heart of Virgo, is to be in service. And the mechanism is when they are afraid, that they refuge in work in the sense of like making like a million tasks, you know, like they, you know, they find refuge in like, well, I have to clean the house, and then after cleaning the house, I'm going to go and, you know, like they get into like lots of, and they want to clean and put things in order. And, you know, they might kind of also get into like a specific diet or a specific kind of exercise. But they are, very meticulous. Like I have a friend that has moon in Virgo, and the moon in Virgo is the type of person that, like, I remember she was always very like quiet, and like if I was like coughing, let's say, and I felt like, you know, and she kind of had this little bag, you know, that, you know, she was like, oh, take this, you know, that this is, you know, like kind of this magic kind of bag that has like everything that others, you know, and they are the ones that are going to say like, I go to the pharmacy, or, And then I have another friend here in London who is a theater producer, you know, and again, you know, like being a producer, it's like, you know, and there's where she has all of her moon, and it's like, if I do all of this well, if I do all of it, you know, people love me. If I'm useful, if I'm practical, you know, she's recently in a new relationship, and I'm always saying, like, be careful of not being like the person that you do everything for your, you know, that you solve your partner's, you know, work problems, you know, like because you're good at it, you know. It's like don't become super efficient in relation to the person that you love. So yeah, it's a very interesting one as well. Yeah, and I really love this, the idea of Virgo being a sign that relates to service and relates to also like rituals and then the body as a vase, as a vase for, you know, for something bigger, you know. It's but yeah, I don't know if it was clear.
Yeah, definitely. As you're talking about, it's making me think of a couple of friends that are Virgos, not Virgo moons.
Okay, yeah,
which is interesting.
Of course. Yeah. It's it's a very, you know, they are very into the detail. I mean, Virgo is just exceptional, the way that they can polish and refine things. And Virgo does it, you know, as well as a way of finding a safe place. You know, we always need to bring back to this is happening because of the moon. Because the moon in Libra, you know, it's very different. The moon in Libra is a moon where what gives security to the person is, you know, beauty, agreement, cooperation, you know. Also, we can imagine a mother who was very sociable, that had lots of friends, and the house was always ready to receive invites, you know, and they were like, kind of like, you know, it was all about, oh, there's all of these people coming home. And I like to think about also the moon in Libra as like this child that is at home, and the mother is like, oh, look how beautiful my daughter is, and she knows how to play the piano, you know. So it's like, why don't you play the piano for my friends, you know? So then the child goes, plays the piano, and unconsciously there's this thing of like, if I please my mom's friends, mom loves me.
Right.
We're talking about an air moon, no, which is about relationships. So there is this thing about like, if I please, if I cooperate, if I'm smart, if I look beautiful, mom loves me. You know, it's as if there's always people between me and mom. So and of course it's a house that is, you know, being kind, is very valued, a house that is always prepared to receive guests, and is surrounded by artists, and like, you know, people linked with beauty and art. And also there's a house that there's a lot of importance to culture, you know, to aesthetics, but also to social issues, because Libra is very important. For Libra, it's very important the needs of the other, you know. So there is a lot of like social kind of compromise, you know, like paying attention to the needs of others. So a moon in Libra needs harmony, needs you know, in relationships, in our like, you know, needs like balance and a sense of beauty, and a relationship that is fair as well. Needs relationship to feel loved, you know. It's like I need to be with someone, so then I feel protected and safe with another as well. And that's the talent of the moon in Libra, which is the how their ability to see what other people's needs, and having this quite good appreciation of beauty, and you know, very kind of they can have like a very strong artistic talent as well, and they're very interested in people. You know, it's again, you know, it's a moon that when it opens, it, you know, when it feels afraid, opens as a way of closing. But there, you know, and there's all of this. Of being compromising, and like, and I say like collaborating, cooperating, agreement, you know. And but what their challenge is that they struggle to say no. They struggle to say, I want this, and you know, that a Libra moon is a person that you go to the cinema and it's like, so what do you want to see? Not only a Libra sun would do that, but a Libra moon is like, does it because needs love, you know, because that's a way that she was going to receive love. A moon in Libra does it because, a sun in Libra does it because it's natural, you know, where a moon does it because there is some sort of emotional stability that brings being, you know, putting the need of the other first. So the mechanism here is like quite tricky. Is that so the moon wakes up and like goes back to the, goes back to moon, which is that is when the moon in Libra starts pleasing all the time, or like, okay, so you say A with a little bit of B, you said B with a little bit of A, there's like common ground.
Yeah.
And struggle so much to say no or to focus on their own desire, and there's like no frontality, because actually being spontaneous or being honest is dangerous. Like if you speak with someone with moon in Libra and you say like, oh, do you like this t-shirt that I'm wearing? Like, let's say you have moon in Libra and I say like, oh, Tamara, do you like this t-shirt? And you just don't like it at all. But you say, well, it's okay. I think that it suits you nicely, but I think that there's other colors that can suit you better. That's a very, no confrontational,
more diplomatic,
super diplomatic. Yeah. So, because, what they want is no conflict, because conflict scares them. So it's interesting because any, particularly Libra, and any person that has a lot of Libra signs, Libra planets, is very key to connect with the body and their own desire, because otherwise they lose themselves in other people's needs or other people's desires, and they kind of struggle to connect with their own. So, I remember doing the chart of a girl, this was many years ago, and she had this thing about not being able to say no or be angry with her partner. And I was saying to her, like, just tell him about this and agree some sort of code. That whenever you feel, that you're angry or you're frustrated or you want to say something, but you can't say it because you have this resistance, because the moon is like, brings this resistance, then, to say to him, like, have a word that you can say that he knows that there's something there that you're struggling to communicate. It's like, because that's another thing, is when the moon, when the mechanism, is like the people around you most closest to you, they need to know. They need to know, so then for them it's not like a shock or an impact, and they don't react, and allow you to, and help you to get out of that state.
Scorpio.
Yes. So this is the moon in Scorpio. The moon in Scorpio is interesting. Like if you think about, like the moon in Cancer is at home. The moon in Taurus is exalted.
Yeah, so the best friend's house.
Yeah, the best friend's house. But when the moon is in the opposite sign of the best friend, like when the moon is in the opposite sign of Taurus, which is Scorpio, is at fall. We say that it's at fall, which means that the moon is like, it's as if like your best friend said, come to this party. You go to that party, your friend is not there, you don't know anyone, you don't know, what are you doing there? You feel like completely out of place in some way, So that means that the moon in Scorpio doesn't feel, what I want to say here is that it doesn't feel very comfortable, because of course the moon is what gives us safety and protection, and Scorpio is a sign that wants to go deep into the underworld, so it's a bit scary, to dive there. So usually it's people that are born with moon in Scorpio, they were like, the umbilical cord was around them, or they were the other way around, or there was some sort of like emergency C-section or something, or even like the mother throughout pregnancy went through a very strong emotional, they went through a strong emotional kind of experience, maybe, so usually what happens is that the birth is a moment where you're being given life, but at the same time, it's a moment of like huge intensity and huge transformation. It's as if like birth is like, it's life and death are very close. It's like moment of like, like there is a sense of like, wow, this is super intense. So there's a fusioning with the mother. There's a mother that is, that has a lot of power and is very intense, and that is very, and that there's this kind of fusioning between the mother and the baby. It's like there's not symbiosis, which would be more Cancer, but here it's as if like the mother desires the child really strongly, so, but also it's like by being near mom, I'm near I'm loved, but then also I'm near an energy that is very demanding, that is very intense, that is, you know, maybe a bit conflictive, you know, in one way or another. So someone with the moon in Scorpio, you know, what do they need, you know, when they experience their childhood being like, you know, with a mother that was there, that was present, that was very intense, that was very, you know, that wants to know everything, you know. Like my brother has moon in, this is also interesting if you think about your family structure, you know, it's like you have the same mother, you know. I have, my mom is, you know, it's my mom, and then we have, you know, my brother, my eldest brother, moon in Cancer, my youngest brother, moon in Scorpio, and I'm moon in Capricorn. And we, the three of us, we experience our mother in completely different ways. You know, my mom with my brother that has moon in Cancer, like opens the window, and I remember once we were in the living room, we were all there, and like she opens the window, I'm like, Mom, why did you open? I said, no, and she's like, no, because Maxi is too warm, which is my brother with moon in Cancer. And I was like, he didn't say anything. You know, like there's this. And then to my youngest brother, he, you know, she used to call him like every day and wanting to know everything about, you know, it was very absorbing. My brother was like, I need to get out of my house, you know, I would need to get, because that's the thing, the moon in Scorpio needs to separate from the mother, you know, as a way of finding being more in touch with themselves. And me, moon in Capricorn, you know, I traveled for a year, you know, in Europe and in the US, and my mom called me, like, you know, like I remember after like 4 months of being traveling, my mom one day said, like, I don't know where you are, where you're living, where you're, you know. So it's a moon in Capricorn, you know, it's a mother that is more distant, or you know. So I mean, just to kind of give, if you think about the context of your family. So the moon in Scorpio, if we, you know, what do they need? They need fusioning. They need to love with passion, with color, with intensity. They need to, you know, like they when they love, it's as if, like, as I always explain, Scorpio, it's like two people, they fall in love, but then they have to die to become one. You know, there's this moment of fusion, you know, of intensity, of transformation. Like love is about transformation. It's about going deeper. It's about having a, you know, they need to fall in love with someone that they can go really deep with them, you know, that they have this connection that that is very, very profound. Then, of course, there's this talent that they are very resourceful. They're very persistent, you know, they strive in crisis. These are the type of people that when, you know, if you're going through like a really tough situation or a crisis or anything, you know, they are going to be there because they emotionally can handle a lot. You know, they are emotionally very strong, very resourceful. And the mechanism is a tricky one, because it's like, is that whenever they feel afraid, you know, or unprotected or nurtured, they, you know, they go back to the moon, which is, you know, a place where everything is very intense, when everything is very transformative, where it could be a bit conflictive. So, for example, a moon in Scorpio, when everything looks like calm and nice and chill, the moon wakes up and it's like there's something wrong. You know? And they are unconsciously, I'm sure, like if anyone is hearing me here with the moon in Scorpio, I'm sure that, you know, you start steering the pot.
Is like that too good to be true kind of self-sabotage?
Well, it's like they don't feel comfortable with everything being nice. It's like something has to be brewing, you know, to feel safe and protected. It's like there's some, you know, it's like being in a relationship and everything is so nice that something was not okay. You know, like that's the type of people that come with those type of experiences, and that they kind of, you know, do something to have a little fight, you know, as a way of creating some sort of conflict. So, okay, I'm at home, you know, like, so there is a bit of like, and you know, like it's as if like, you know, like being in conflict or being in this kind of more toxic or manipulative or controllable. I mean, if we are looking at it in a lower level, you know, it's a safe place. But of course, it can be that the moon in Scorpio can also be a relationship that can be so so transformative, so that allows you to because that's the thing, it's like the moon in Scorpio is about taboos, sex, death, religion, you know, like race, you know, it's about really tapping into those themes, the undercurrent, you know. And what is it that you share? You know, Scorpio is what we share with one another. It's about intimacy. And, you know, we share, if we look at it from the perspective of the 8th house, we share possessions and money. But what do we truly share with people? It's like we share energy, we share emotions, feelings, you know, and that is what like a moon in Scorpio is like interested in sharing, and what is happening in the inner lives of people, and their ability to get into kind of more underground, like the more kind of psychological kind of level as well. So yeah, it's like, it's interesting. Like I would say that I would always encourage that whenever you feel that everything is nice, and you know, what is that feeling of uncomfortable, you know, what makes you feel uncomfortable about that, and how not to sabotage, as you said, like, you know, by doing something that could provokes some sort of conflict. Because yeah, I mean, there's a fear of things being too nice and too good, you know? Because things, they need to be, you know, they need to be felt with depth, you know, like otherwise I'm not safe. I mean, just to kind of put it in a broader way, you know. But yeah, clearly there is, you know, there's a need of a love that goes deep, and an understanding, a connection, where people, where, you know, when someone with the moon in Scorpio falls in love with someone else, they need to be able to express their biggest fears, their biggest, you know, their shadow side, you know, their traumas, and
so
you know,
because that's making me think, like, kind of like more, is that when they need to be careful of like trauma bonding and then codependency as well? Are they themes for Scorpio Moon?
Yeah, codependency could also be Libra Moon, but yeah, trauma, yeah, totally. It's also being in love with toxic, you know, most probably what tends to happen sometimes is that when you are young, you get into relationships that, you know, with the moon in a Scorpio, you kind of get into these relationships that can be very manipulative, very toxic, very mysterious. You know, it's like they can fall in love with or be interested in like someone that is like, oh, there's something very mysterious that so they feel attracted to that energy. You know, they are, of course, the moon in Scorpio feels attracted to anything that is like the occult, the mysteries of life, like the esoteric. You know, all of that. There's a huge. This is like a home. You know, it feels like safe.
Yeah.
But then when they grow older, we do with all of our moons, we at the beginning connect with the most raw energy of it. And then we start elevating and evolving and realizing that I don't want a toxic relationship. I want a transformative relationship, because Scorpio is about transformation, but also destruction. So, you know, and the line is quite thin. So do I choose a relationship that it takes me to a destructive place, or do I choose a relationship that takes me to a transformative place? You know, it's a learning process, and a learning that has to do with your needs, you know, your background, your history, your past. So it's very embedded. So that's why breaking this mechanism is not like super easy. It requires a lot of work. A lot of work.
Yeah, I guess that level of self-awareness.
Yeah, of observing. And I mean, it's not easy. It's the moon is, you know, it's so unconscious. It just happens. Even like, I mean, I know about my moon in Capricorn for the last 20 years, and I still, when I feel afraid and protected, it's like sometimes I find myself inside the mechanism.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm already in. You know, I wasn't able to see it from before.
Yeah.
I'm already in. And I work a lot in translating this to my partner. So then, you know, he knows how to, I mean, he naturally knew from the beginning. I mean, it was one of the things that was so good about our relationship, that because you need to have people around that don't react to this, like, you know, this energy, this kind of unconscious, desperate mode of like, I need safety. You know, it's you know, we can't also have someone else, you know, on the other side just clashing with us. We need support. You know, we need that person to allow us, to show us the way out. You know.
Yeah. Definitely.
Then the moon in Sagittarius is like super different, because here the energy is very abundant, you know, and expansive, and about trust. You know, let's imagine, you know, this baby that is born and is super joyful, super dynamic, you know, and lives in a house that there's like space to explore, and there's like trees to go up, you know, a house with you know, it's usually there's a family background that there's like strong or religious or ideological kind of perspectives, and it's a child that lives like kind of, you know, very kind of, if you know, it would say, you know, of course this depends on all of the other aspects, you know, but there's something about not going through any frustration or pain, where there's like a family that feels like safe as well. You know, there's a like an admiration to other lands, you know, so usually there's an uncle that comes with objects from Africa, so there's this longing that other lands are home, you know, they feel familiar, and there's a trust in life. So what happens is that, you know, what do someone with Moon in Sagittarius need? They need space. They need someone that they can learn from, you know, that they can teach or that they can be taught as well. You know, they need like to expand their consciousness, to travel. And when I say travel, it's like travel with the mind, with the spirit, with the body, with the emotions. You know, they need that kind of sense of expansion. Sorry. Yeah.
No, I just agree.
Yeah, so it's like, and they need optimism and belief and, you know, and adventuring, and, you know, that feeling that things are possible, that and they are usually super happy and joyful and motivated, and that's actually their talent. Their talent is that their generosity, you know, their vitality, their optimism, and their capacity to make synthesis of things. They're like, you know, they are very good at, you know, at also like finding ideas, and but they are very idealistic in a way. And then the mechanism is a very interesting one, is because when the moon gets very triggered, wakes up, and in a very unconscious way searches for situations, the conditions of freedom, you know, of space, of optimism, to calm down their emotional world, you know. So usually there's this particularly when they are young, you know, they could go through a phase where there's a problem, oh, like, that's not important, don't worry, I sort it tomorrow. Or they rationalize and conceptualize it, and like, you know, and detach themselves from the problem. Or they go and they, you know, they resign and they go to a trip to India, you know, like as a way of like taking distance, you know. It's like a safe place as well. And I actually have a few friends here in London with Moon in Sagittarius, and the first lockdown was quite of a thing, you know. It's like feeling that restriction of not being able to travel, not being able to go, you know, to go anywhere. I think that this is a sign, or a moon sign, that most probably struggled quite a lot during lockdown. But I always say, you know, you can travel with your mind by reading a book. You can travel in other ways. Don't get so attached to traveling physically, you know. Find other ways of traveling, you know. There's millions of ways you can travel. Like, I mean, you know, in you know, it's a matter of like being creative and detaching oneself from that kind of identification of like, I need to move my body from here to there, no. And so it's very, and I also have like this the son of a friend of mine. They live in Spain. He is 2 or 3 years, and in Spain the lockdown was so harsh to the point that children couldn't leave for months out of the house. You know, they weren't allowed in the street. And then when they were allowed to go out from like 12 to 2, children from his age were allowed to go to the street. My friend said to me that he was just running from one place to the other and saying, I can't stop running, he was saying.
Oh my god.
He's so like, I feel so good, and like running around like crazy, like I mean, you would not believe, he's like a smile, you know, like his Moon in Sagittarius has a big smile. He's always laughing, always like, you know, I mean, he's embodying all of this. So it's and I thought, oh my God, imagine like for a little child that has Moon in Sagittarius, like being able to go out and explore life, because that's what a Moon in Sagittarius needs, is to explore. That is like safe, other lands, other countries, going, you know, it's like, you know, they feel at home when they are reflecting about the meaning of life. They feel at home when they're at the airport, you know, they feel at home when they're in any spiritual place as well. When they're like philosophizing as well, everything related to knowledge and philosophy and knowing and religion and spirituality they feel at home, and they know there's an affinity with symbols as well. With kind of more kind of symbolic languages is interesting. So then if we go to the moon in Capricorn, which, again, like the moon is at home in Cancer, it's an exile in Capricorn. It's like in the opposite sign of home, so it's in a very kind of unknown place. It's a place where, imagine that the moon's supposed to be homey and warm and cozy, and Capricorn is distant, it's cold, it's gray. So it's like oh, how can these two energies coexist? How can this work together? So the energy that wraps that covers a child when they are born with the moon in Capricorn is quite cold, it's distant, and they are born with this Capricorn quality of being able to protect themselves alone. They are like this kind of old child, old soul in a child's body. These are children that they mature very fast, that they are very self-sufficient from very young age. And this is like, being self-sufficient is a talent for an adult, but not for a child. And there's usually a mother that there's no so much physical contact. And it's a child that most probably the mother says, oh no, she loves being alone. She really likes playing by herself. The mothers that they say something like that. Yeah. I'm like, oh, let's check the child.
Yeah.
Because it's not that, it's something that plays out between mother and son or daughter. It's so there's a capacity to be alone, and also it's a home where discipline was valued, and being self-sufficient and being good and being responsible and doing things correctly. It's kind of the unconscious. It's like people love me, like Sagittarius Moon, it was people love me because I'm optimistic and happy. So I forgot to say, the people with Moon in Sagittarius, what they struggle with is to show that they are sad, that they are vulnerable. Because it's like, if I go and I cry, they will not love me anymore. Because I need to be happy and joyful and like, and I do all of these adventures. And it's not like, it's not like that. That's an interesting kind of fact of the moon in Sagittarius. Going back to the moon in Capricorn, what does someone with moon in Capricorn needs is structure, is commitment, is it's like falling in love is a responsibility, is a commitment. They go quite slow emotionally. It takes time. Like, I'm moon in Capricorn, and I had my first boyfriend when I was 28. And my current boyfriend is like my second partner. Like, and what I mean is that there's emotionally, there's something quite slow. And please bear in mind that I'm ascendant moon in Capricorn. I'm Venus Saturn conjunction.
There's a lot of Capricorn. There's a lot of air.
Yeah. So but there's a lot of like an energy that takes time to So that's why like my example is a bit extreme, just because it has all of these components. So so opening up to love is a big learning for a moon in Capricorn. But they take relationships and love quite seriously, very cautious, and they need structure. They need someone that they can lean over and count with. And there's a talent that, of course, of making things happen, making things real, working. They are very good at achieving it. And unconsciously, there's this like ancient memory of like, people love me because I achieve. People love me because I make things happen. And it's interesting because I would challenge the audience to pick up or to observe themselves when they introduce themselves to someone for the first time. What do you do? What face do you show? Like a moon in Capricorn is like, grabs a paper and it's like my curriculum. So here we go. I did this, I did, because people will love me if they see how much I've done. I mean, it's a memory that is ancient, as I said, it's like someone that is like Moon in Gemini will want to show how smart and how witty and how curious, someone with the Moon in Sagittarius is like, I'm wonderful, I'm like happy, I did this, I traveled to this country, and then I went to this other country, and then and then I lived in this indigenous, like, I don't know, like, tribe, and so it's like, well, how do you introduce yourself? Observe that, because that speaks so much about, about this need of love and being accepted and being appreciated, So wait, I'm going to put this, that is bothering me there. Sorry. So so then the mechanism of a moon in Capricorn is, as I mentioned, like, people love me because I achieve. So the mechanism, when it gets wake up, the moon, it gets like a workaholic. There's this thing about like work, merit, achieving, being quite militant with oneself. I have to wake up this and this time, and then I need to do this and I need to do that, and and there is and there's this rigidity. Like I'm Moon in Capricorn, and the nuances of the moon and like the subtleties of how things can play out, and that it's not about you and your moon, it's about your relationship with your mother. Like so I have extreme pain in my ovaries when I have my period. And this was also like 15 years ago. I was in Buenos Aires, and my period came, and I was in bed the whole day, like in so much pain. And I remember my mom. So what happened was that actually I want to mention that when I was learning astrology, one day I said to my mom, like, I have this moon in Capricorn, and I explained, I think I felt very abandoned, because that's a feeling of a moon in Capricorn, it's a feeling of abandonment. And she got so upset. She was like, when did I abandon you? Like, that never happened. Like, literally, my mom was always at home. She took us to school, picks us up from school, helped me with homework, very present mother. And she got so upset about like me saying that. And I said, well, can I give you an example? And I said, one day, I don't remember when it was, I was with my period pain. I was in bed. I was in so much pain for like 2 days in bed. And you come into my room, and I'm there in bed by myself in my room. And and I say like, and I'm there, and you say like, how are you? And I'm like, I'm fine. And inside of me, I'm thinking, please touch me, please touch me, please touch me. I just needed my mom to sit next to me on the bed, or to hold my hand for a second, or like, just like do like, like a little, like, I was like, please touch me, please touch me. And I said like, no, I'm okay. Of course, I didn't ask for help, because that's something that a moon in Capricorn never does. But then also it was like, she just like said, oh, okay. So she left the room, closed the door, and left. And she just like, and I explained her that, and she said, but I felt that you wanted to be alone. And I was like, oh, you know what I mean? It's just, it was like, wow, like I was craving for her to touch me, and she sensed that I wanted to be by myself. Yeah. And that is like how subtle it can play out, the moon, because it's an energy that kind of plays with in that relationship. But as I mentioned, like, my moon is very very extreme because of other conditions. The moon in Capricorn, might not be this, it shouldn't be like this extreme in terms of, but yes, the feeling of responsibility and duty, and the main thing is to relax and to find a way of cultivating resilience and flexibility with all of the earth moons, is quite important. And then we go to the moon in Aquarius, which is your moon.
Yeah, me.
Yeah. And this is fascinating moon, because it's a moon where security is in what is open. It's a moon where there needs to be a possibility of renovation. I always say, like, my mom is the sky and the roof are the stars, like for a moon in Aquarius. And here's where we can actually experience a mother who can be very, very distant and very close, very present and very absent, immense and empty at the same time. It's usually a mother that gives love in a way that is intermittent, like, I love you, but I have to go and do this, and I love you, so there is this kind of moments of like love, but then, like there's this kind of spasms, let's say, or moments of like, you know, I feel love, but then there is this like void that appears. So yeah, and there's a lot of unexpected events. I always imagine like the moon in, well, like my partner is moon in Aquarius, and he moved house like so many times, college, school as well, and the capacity of renovation comes from these experiences in which you go to a school, and you are there adapting, making friends, and then suddenly boom, another school, you know, and you know, and you have to start all over again. So actually renovating, changing, staying open, you know, and being friendly, you know, all of this starts like kind of being part of this sense of like being nurtured and feeling safe and protected. So what does someone with moon in Aquarius need? They need, of course, freedom and space and diversity and eccentricity and like creativity and being very ingenious as well. They need a relationship where they can feel free. And it doesn't, you know, it could be a free type of relationship, but even if it's like, you know, a relationship that is you with someone else, it needs to open up a sense of like, I have my own space, I have my own individuality, I have my own authenticity, and I can express how quirky and different and you know, and you know, out of balance, you know, out of balance in the sense of like being like different, being you know, that you don't fit in, you know, that a moon in Aquarius could go through phases in life where they felt like an outsider, that they didn't feel fit in, that they didn't belong, or feeling marginated or left aside. You know, that's part of like what also safety is. It's like I'm a bit like an eccentric, and so their talent is that they feel very friendly. They're very open to new people, new circumstances, new situation. Actually, it's like wherever you meet someone that is like quite exotic and there's something very interesting, it's like, oh, you know, there's some sort of like attraction. And they are usually like ahead of the time, you know, in like the way they think, and they think outside the box. They are interested in the new, in what is different, in technology, in what is coming. They're always like, yeah, a little bit like ahead of the time, you know, like when you wrote the book of like Christus, you know, like they were, I don't know, like, well, I was not into, you know, like, you know, like, but there's something about doing something just a little bit before everyone else does it, you know, like what I mean? And then the mechanism is also quite interesting, because it's like whenever they feel afraid, when protected and nurtured, they go back to this refuge, which is about like shutting down. It's like, vroom, you know, it's like I bring the curtain down and turning on and off. It's as if like you can turn off your feelings. And it's okay to turn off once in a while, because everything is too intense. When things are too intense, when people are too demanding or too possessive or like too problematic, you know, it's like, oh, like a moon in air doesn't like so much intensity. It's like, it's like I can't breathe with all of this, you know. So because it's like you can't breathe, it's like I switch off. And it's like, you know, and and the curtain is down, and people can be, you know, the person can be crying in front of you and you just don't feel, or there's something that kind of like detach, you know. And so it's good, as I mentioned, it's always good to go to the moon, you know, at times. The thing is, when you go in repetition, I always say to people with the moon, don't stay switch off for too long. You know, learn to be more on than off, you know, like kind of choose, you know, don't get into the automatic, you know. Because that's the thing, is when we get into the automatic mechanism of the moon. So, you know, the moon in Aquarius is when something is very intense or very intimate or very emotionally, they can shut down, or they can become detached, or they more impersonal perspective, you know. It's like, well, you know, like I don't think about this or that, like, you know, staying a bit kind of with distance. And what they are actually covering is like, you know, is the fear of an emotional void. What they cover by being friendly or by shutting down is like, this is just too much emotionally for me. So it's an interesting, you know, it's again like it's a moon that whenever they feel afraid and protected, that like they socialize as a way of finding like this feeling of being safe and protected. Do you resonate with this?
Yeah, definitely. I'm just like processing it as you're talking about it. It's also interesting because my moon is in Aquarius, but my mum is in Aquarius, which I find like interesting. So yeah, like how like she's a like single mum, but she was one that, like, always there. Like my dad
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, but like she was always there. But and also, like you said, that she's there, but then she's not, or
Mm-hmm.
she'd be working away, or
Yeah.
she would, so it's interesting. Like that's kind of like making me sort of think about that, and yeah, like just that kind of social aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
Of like I do when I'm not feeling like, I'm calling myself out now, all my friends will be like, okay, no. But when I'm not feeling okay, I'll ask other people how they are.
Like it's interesting, you reach out.
Yeah. So rather than be like, how, I'm just like, how you doing? Like, what's going on? Like, so that's what I that's something I do that I didn't realize was an Aquarius Moon thing, and didn't really realize that was a thing that like a mechanism. But it is. So maybe like in a similar way, like where you said, like when your mum's like bought 7 books, like, or when I'm catching myself messaging people saying like, how are you doing? Like, that might be like a little red flag for me.
That's exactly what is quite key, is to see the red flags. Is to, and then accept the feelings, acknowledge them, allow them space, and know that there's nothing wrong, and that learn to also, communicate this, rather than like, oh no, everything, like putting it away. Because your moon is also, so your moon is in Aquarius, but it's also in the 5th house, which is the house of Leo, which is the house where you feel at home when you're creating. There's usually like an artistic talent or an artistic expression that needs to be expressed. Like there's and there's an, of course, with the moon there, there's an interested in. Of course, you feel at home when you're like creating, when you're being creative, when you're playful, when there's romance, there's a longing for children as well, there's. But your moon is also doing a square to quite strong square to Mars. So you might resonate with the moon in Aries, and there's something there about that is like more tense and more active and more productive, and your moon is actually doing quite a lot of things. It's also doing a Chiron to a square to Chiron. So that's there's a lot. You know what I mean? It's like we are much more than just the sign where the moon is. It's, all of this is bringing super much, many other layers of information, to your emotional needs, and like, and your emotional, your nurturing experiences in the past, and like also what you are, how you're evolving in that sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting. And also the moon in the 5th is like, I like to think like the public loves you. The moon in the 5th is someone that, and in Aquarius, it's like you can make people feel comfortable so quickly. People feel so relatable to you, and it's a side of you that has a bit of a Leo smell, as a moon in Leo, that you're contagious, you inspire, there's something very, very nice about that. And then of course the moon Mars is, quite you might have experienced things that were a bit like tense with your body, with your there's a lot to develop there, but that's another thing, aspects is another thing. So the last one,
moon in Pisces.
Oof. So the moon in Pisces is, Pisces of course is a sign that goes beyond words, is when the cycle of the zodiac finishes. The Piscean quality is a quality of no borders, and usually, when I say usually, it's like I'm imagining, let's imagine like a mother that is omnipresent, with the moon in Pisces, a mother that through the real mother, that person gets in touch with the mothers, like ancestors, other mothers, it's like through mom, I reach like my grandmother, my great grandmother, and this kind of female lineage. And she feels it's a baby that feels protected by this infinite love, and it's a mother that has a huge sensitivity towards life, that is very delicate or vulnerable, or that needs a lot of like attention. But yes, clearly with the moon in Pisces, that's usually quite strong female figures. And it's a childhood that like visions and perceptions and dreams and fantasies was like super, it was like a bubble, let's say, you know, like a magic bubble. And then so if we look at the needs of the moon in Pisces, it's a need of magic, of a connection that is from the soul to the soul, you know, of, you know, with huge sensitivity. A moon in Pisces has so strong, like psychic and mystic, like interest and qualities, you know. It's actually words can really hurt a moon in Pisces, what you say, because they define, you know, and a moon in Pisces doesn't want any definition, you know. It's like, is this ocean where we are all one, where there's no division, no border, and where like being like undefined is where you find like that sense of love. I mean, I know that it's very abstract what I'm saying, but it talks about unconditional love. That's, you know, where I want to kind of get. It's like a love that wants to love in an unconditional way and wants to be loved in that way as well. And the talent is the imagination, you know, the music, the empathy, the compassion, you know, the artistic qualities, and the way that they can protect others, you know, and give to others as well. They're quite healing, you know, they're very strong healers. And the mechanism, as I mentioned, with all of the water signs is that inner world, like is the refuge, is this fantasy of like pure imagination, pure and it's a different fantasy to the moon in Cancer. The moon in Cancer is a fantasy of what I'm going to do when I'm older. You know, dreaming about when I'm going to be old. Where the moon in Pisces is this closing in and getting into this inner magical world of visuals, of perceptions, of experiences that are very that grasp like the intangible, the, you know, what, I don't know how to put it into words now. It's very Pisces what is happening.
The Pisces moon. Yeah. I know, I hear you. I feel you.
yeah, totally. It's you know, very sensitive, very vulnerable, and the archetypes of Pisces are the mystic, the storyteller, but also the savior, the martyr, the victim, you know. So it can play out those type of things with the mother, you know, with their own emotions. So learning to put boundaries is a big thing for a moon in Pisces, and protecting their own energy and cleansing, because they absorb so much from the outside world. You know, they absorb from situations, people, circumstances, and they need to detox and cleanse so they can really connect. And this is for any moon in water. You know, they really need to detox the body from everything that they absorb from the world, because that's the only way, well, not the only way, but that's a way of like connecting with their emotions and their needs, and not being so invaded with others, you know, because otherwise a moon in Pisces can lose themselves in other people's. And so yeah, it's very creative moon. This is super creative and very much related to spirituality and healing as well. So
interesting.
Yeah, so we went through the whole
zodiac.
Woo! Wow, that was a lot.
How are you feeling?
Yeah, good. Yeah, no, I actually this thing that I was saying to you before, that today the moon is in Virgo, and I feel that we are channeling a bit like this of going, you know, one
being
by
of
one,
service and like getting it all down.
yeah, totally. But yeah, it's fascinating. It's and you know, as I said, you know, before, there's so much more. This is just
scratching the surface.
Yeah, and it's like I'm staying in the archetypal side of the stories as a way of just bringing, you know, kind of more kind of clear understanding. Then of course each chart is unique and different, and
And like for anybody, so anyone's like listening to this, like how can they find out more about it? Like what do you recommend? And also like how can they work with you if they are like want to learn more from you?
So well,
that was about 5 questions in one, sorry.
No, well, I give lots of workshops every month. and I do readings as well. I mean, that if they want something kind of closer to like a reading, is like a very personal experience. And but then there's like workshops of like that. I do one that is about looking the astrology of each month. Like I do that, it's a gathering that I do every month.
That's online, isn't it? You do that all online.
Yeah, I'm doing everything online at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's and you know, if they want to kind of, I would say that if they want to connect more with the moon and the, you know, it's, you know, first is looking at the moon sign, then the moon house, and tracking the moon in your chart. That is also quite interesting.
Are there any apps or software that you use to like help?
No, I'm so not. I use a software that is like the software that I use for everything. Yeah. But apps. Well, there's one that is quite good. That professional astrologers use is Astro Gold. That has an app. But with the moon, no. I follow it in this. No, I'm not into.
So the moon like changes sign every
2 days and a half. Yeah.
So that's quite easy to track, and the new moon will always be, and like it is kind of easy enough.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a full moon and new moon in a month. I mean, it's once you get used to, once you get into the habit, you know, it's quite easy to follow. And then also you can always check online, you know, say like, what is the moon today? Or also astro.com is a really good one to get your chart if you don't have it. It has a lot of information, that website.
And then for anyone that's if anyone that's listening to this and they're not sure, didn't know what their moon sign was, then they can just go to, would you say astro.com?
Yes, astro.com. And then you put your because imagine that is like you have 2 days and a half of the moon in the same sign. So even if you don't have the time, you can also search for your moon. And if your moon is at the beginning of a sign or at the end of a sign, then yes, you need the time to be more accurate, because the moon moves quite fast actually. But astro.com is the best one.
Right, and what's your website?
Astrologyforartists.com is my website, and Astrology for Artists my Instagram.
So a question that I always ask everybody at the end of these recordings is that if you could go to another phase in your life, what would it be? So it could be like just to enjoy it or to give yourself a message.
Yeah, that's interesting. Where would I go? I mean, I like to kind of always be in where I am now, no? But but actually, I was just the first thing that came to my mind was when I actually moved to London, and I did this master, and I went. You know, I would like encourage myself to trust my instinct and to trust my process. It was like a very special year, and lots of things happened. So I always think back to that year, and I'm like, why? How did I do all of that? Like, how did I went through all of that? Like, and I admire that year. I actually admire that myself that year, like how I actually fought and pushed myself. I'm like always thinking like, wow, like what strength I had then that I don't have now. You know what I mean? Like I was like, oh god. Anyway,
you have to channel it.
It was an interesting phase of my life.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for like listening, and
it's been so nice talking to you. Like, and I know that people who probably have pages full of notes that they've taken, and probably like me, like after your workshop, being like, mate, when there's like ringing up so like their friends, like what's your moon sign, like what's your moon sign, which is, I think it's when we understand our moon signs, it just gives us another way to articulate what we need. And I think that can take the pressure off our relationships, whether it's friendships, romantic relationships, and even with our family that we presume should know us, but often don't.
No, I mean, it's exactly, I think that that's a great point. Yeah,
especially with everything that's going on at the moment.
Yeah, like really communicating this to whoever is around you right now is, you know, it's a really good conversation to have.
Yeah. And also having that compassion for what that other person, I think that's what really helped me understanding my moon sign and my boyfriend's moon sign is like, oh, we're speaking different love languages.
Yeah, Taurus and in Aquarius. Wow, super. Yeah,
so hard. It's so different, and it's just. But I think that's like a different level of intimacy when you start to know. Okay, like, and what you were describing with the money thing, like with the money is the thing for him. If he's worried about he's self-employed, like that triggers him. So, but whereas me, I'm like, right, let's get to it. Let's let's make stuff happen.
Yeah, that's very moon in Aquarius, but also very moon Mars, you know. It's like action. Okay, very kind of proactive.
Definitely. So we're both, that's where we're different, but I think it's so good to have that awareness of where that other person is coming from, so that we can hang on a minute, that's their mechanism, or that's what they need, but like that's their red flag. So what will make them, like for my boyfriend, like the happy, what he's like, what makes him really happy, like me cooking him a nice dinner.
Oh God, yeah.
That he's just like, that's just when he's so happy.
That's amazing. That's so, yeah.
So that's kind of like how I kind of just how we can support people as well, like what they're understanding. Okay, well, again, sometimes it's what we again, like I was saying earlier, with our like purpose, like is right under our nose. Like what we need is right under our nose, but we don't know like that's what's going on. Exactly like how you had that awareness with your mum. Books, like I keep coming back to that, but I think it's just that from the outside in we see things so differently, don't we? And I think sometimes that's how we can help other people. And maybe sometimes again, like how you were explaining with your moon in Capricorn, and how it's like, oh, she's okay, like she can just get on with things, or she doesn't need it, just because somebody isn't asking for it.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean that that's not what they need, or that like we have that perception of how someone is. And again, in relationships we have this projection, and sometimes that can be like if you're in a romantic relationship, that puts a lot of pressure because you're like, you should know me, or you should know this about me, or you should just get it, like you should know this about, but they don't, because they've got their own mechanism thing going on.
Exactly. And actually I was just thinking how like most probably your partner really grounds you. You know, there's something that gives you like a base where you mobilize him, you know, with your Mars Moon, and then in Aquarius it's like, oh, there's this and there's like you bring him more options, more alternatives. So it's like how also
stubborn, so he doesn't do them.
God. Oh my God. But it's interesting how we can learn from, you know, from each other's moon as well, you know.
Definitely. That's and like what we're attracted to, like how you were saying with the guy with all of that Leo, like what we're we project what we kind of that onto another person as well, don't we?
Totally. I'm thinking like, you know, I have 5 planets in Libra, and my partner is Aries, with ascendant in Aries, with Venus in Aries. So he's the opposite, you know. And one of the things that I really admire about him is like that assertiveness and that knowing, you know, and that trust. And I'm always like how, like you know, like with a Libra perspective, it's like, how do you do that? Like, you know, like, so it's like, you know,
how do you make that decision?
And it's interesting how, you know, we sometimes get attracted with what we lack, or what we need to learn and incorporate or assimilate or integrate more within us.
Definitely.
So
I feel like we could talk about this for hours. I'm gonna have to like get you on for like the next series.